When people think of disasters, they imagine something loud. Unexpected earthquakes that snap roads in seconds, gas explosions that bring down buildings, volcanic eruptions that cover entire cities in ash. But sometimes, the real danger is creeping in without a sound. Parts of Arizona are sinking, slowly losing elevation year after year. Why is this happening? And just how much damage can something like this actually cause? Arizona isn't sitting on solid rock. It's sitting on a geological layer cake of sand, clay, and gravel. Think of the ground beneath your feet like a giant wet kitchen sponge. When a sponge is full of water, it's fluffy and holds its shape. That water isn't just in the dirt, it's what's holding everything up. Here's where things go wrong. People pump out that water to use it, but if they take it out faster than nature can put it back in, the gaps start to close. The grains get squished together by the weight of everything above, and when that happens, the ground starts losing the fight. Without the water to hold them apart, the dirt layers collapse under the weight of the world, almost literally. But once that happens, it's not like a sponge anymore. It's like a crushed soda can. You can't just blow air into a flat soda can and fix it. The structure is ruined. Once those underground layers are crushed, they stay crushed forever. Even if it rains for 40 days and 40 nights, the ground can't hold the water anymore. This is called land subsidence. It doesn't matter if water is pumped out or if rainwater rushes away too fast. If underwater pressure drops for long enough, the land starts to sink. And it's not just a one-time thing. Every year that more water is pumped out, the land sinks a little more. Over time, these changes can reshape entire towns and regions. So how do scientists notice something this subtle? From the ground, subsidence is hard to spot. The surface doesn't suddenly drop in one obvious place. Buildings don't suddenly tip over. You won't wake up one day to see your neighbor's house being a few inches lower than yours. Most of the time, everything looks normal. So to really see what's happening, scientists have to look from above, way up from space. Scientists use INSAR satellites, super precise scanners in orbit that can spot ground changes thinner than a US nickel from hundreds of miles away. Using this method, scientists tracked parts of Arizona over several years. What they found was alarming. Large areas weren't just sinking a little. Some places were dropping by inches every year. In certain regions, the total drop added up to several feet in just a short span of time. And this wasn't limited to one small spot. Entire basins were moving downward together, like a slow-motion elevator heading down. What made this even more concerning is that the sinking didn't stop during the wetter years. Even when rainfall increased and water levels rose a bit, the land kept sinking. In some places, this process actually sped up. That told scientists something important. The ground wasn't just reacting to short-term weather, it was responding to years of pressure building underground. Even from space, the pattern was impossible to miss. Wide regions glowing on satellite maps, showing steady downward motion year after year. What looked stable from the street turned out to be quietly shifting across miles of land. And once scientists could see it clearly, a bigger question emerged. What now? The surface can only take so much before it snaps. The land doesn't sink evenly. One spot drops fast, another barely moves. That pulls the surface in opposite directions. The surface tries to stretch, but eventually it snaps. And we aren't talking about sidewalk cracks. The earth literally rips open, creating jagged wounds called fissures, wide enough to split roads apart and damage paved highways. Infrastructure absolutely hates this. Roads bend, twist, and buckle. Pipes and cables buried underground are yanked out of alignment or torn apart. Canals that depend on a gentle, steady slope suddenly stop flowing the way they're supposed to. Even buildings that look fine at first start to give themselves away. Floors can tilt, doors might refuse to close, and long fractures can appear across walls. Wells are affected too. As the ground compacts, it crushes the underground rock layers like a vise. This closes off the flow, turning a working well into a dry hole. Basically, by pumping too much, we're breaking the pump. But it might get worse. These problems spread across entire basins, meaning damage can show up far from where the sinking first began. By the time surface damage becomes obvious, the underground changes that caused it may already be locked in, which means the real challenge isn't fixing the cracks you can see. It's dealing with the ground that's still slowly changing beneath them. So, can this be stopped? Or maybe reversed? Here's the harsh reality. There is no undo button for this. Once that underground rock is crushed, it stays crushed. The best we can do is step on the brakes and stop it from getting worse. One approach is artificial recharge. Arizona has built massive systems to move water across the state. One of the biggest is the Central Arizona Project, a canal that stretches more than 330 miles, carrying water from the Colorado River deep into the desert. They dump massive amounts of water into giant empty fields called recharge basins, letting it seep back underground to repressurize the earth. It's not fixing the crushed sponge. That damage is done. It's more like loosening your grip so you don't crush it even more. You don't get the space back, but you can keep things from getting worse. The other approach is tougher. Arizona drew some hard lines on the map. They're called active management areas, and inside them, groundwater use is tightly limited. You can't just drill a well anywhere and pump non-stop anymore. The goal is to stop one area from sinking so fast that it pulls everything around it down too. In places like Phoenix and Tucson, where these rules kicked in early, the sinking actually slowed down. In other parts of the state, where pumping stayed heavy and rules were looser, the ground kept dropping. Not because the idea doesn't work, but because slowing subsidence only works if pressure is eased early. Arizona is just the latest member of the Sinking Cities Club. In fact, there are far worse cases around the planet. Look at California. The Central Valley there is basically the world champion of deflation. Farmers have been pumping water out of the ground so aggressively for so long that in some spots, the land has dropped by 30 feet. It's gotten so bad that gravity-fed canals are confused because water doesn't like flowing uphill. Then you have Mexico City. The problem there goes back hundreds of years. The city was built right on top of an ancient drained lake bed. As water was pumped out to support a growing population, the ground began to sink. In some neighborhoods, buildings now sit many feet lower than they did a century ago. Streets have been repaved again and again, not because they wore out, but because the city itself kept dropping. It's happening all over the map, from coastal towns to big farming hubs. The ground is getting tired of holding us up. Arizona is just proving how sneaky this can be. It quietly reshapes the world while we're busy looking at our phones, which makes you wonder. If huge chunks of the planet can sink this quietly, how many places are changing right now without anyone noticing? It really makes you rethink the phrase solid ground. Maybe the ground floor will become a basement in 30 years. Or maybe it's just Earth sending us a bill for all the water we carelessly throw away. Okay, just like Arizona, those jokes are a bit dry. So I'll stop now before I sink any lower. Thanks for watching, and try not to let the situation get you down. The floor is lava. Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help!" Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level, and a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence, and when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, The total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the endgame here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first. Imagine standing in a quiet northern town, surrounded by mountains and forests, when the ground beneath your feet suddenly shifts with the force of a freight train. That's not a movie scene. It's a very real possibility for the people living in Dawson City, Canada. Hidden beneath the tranquil Yukon landscape lies a geological giant, the Tintina Fault. For more than 12,000 years, it has been silent. But new research suggests it might be ready to wake up in a spectacular and dangerous way. Stretching over 1,000 kilometers from the Yukon into Alaska, the Tintina Fault is like a massive crack in Earth's crust, a boundary where colossal slabs of rock slowly grind past each other. On the surface, it looks harmless, just rugged terrain, rivers, and forests. But deep underground, strain is quietly building, like a spring being wound tighter and tighter. Theron Findlay, a geologist from the University of Victoria, and his team decided to take a closer look at a section of this fault near Dawson City. This wasn't just a casual inspection. They used cutting-edge tools like high-resolution satellite images, aerial surveys, and LiDAR, a laser-based scanning method that can reveal subtle changes in the ground's shape. What they found was unsettling. In one location, the ground was visibly displaced by an astonishing 1,000 meters, evidence of a long series of powerful earthquakes millions of years ago. In another area, they spotted a smaller but still significant offset of about 75 meters, likely caused by more recent quakes, roughly 132,000 years ago. Since then, nothing major. At least, nothing visible. And that's exactly the problem. When a fault line hasn't released energy for thousands of years, it doesn't mean it's safe. Quite the opposite. It could mean that massive pressure has been silently accumulating. Based on their calculations, the Tintina Fault has been moving at a slow creep of up to 0.8 millimeters per year. Over 12,000 years, that adds up to a staggering 6 meters of potential movement waiting to be unleashed. If that strain were to suddenly break free, the resulting earthquake could be bigger than magnitude 7.5. For context, that's in the same league as some of the most destructive quakes in history, like the 1976 Tangshan earthquake in China, or the 2010 Haiti disaster. While the Yukon isn't densely populated, the impact could still be devastating, damaging highways, collapsed buildings, landslides cutting off communities, and potentially loss of life. The scientists can't say when it will happen. Earthquakes don't work on a schedule, and predicting the exact moment of rupture is one of geology's greatest challenges. What they do know is that the Tintina fault is in what's called a late stage of its seismic cycle, a point where the risk of a major quake is higher. For the people of Dawson City and surrounding areas, this means living with a quiet but ever-present threat. Emergency planners might advise residents to have evacuation routes, survival kits, and backup communication plans. But in the end, this is a reminder of a simple truth. Earth is never truly still. Even in the most peaceful landscapes, immense forces are always at work, reshaping the planet in ways we can't always see, until the day they reveal themselves with a violent jolt. Yet, the story of the Tintina fault is more than a warning. It's a glimpse into how Earth stores and releases its pent-up energy. Each millimeter of annual movement is like another twist of a key in a lock. At some point, the lock will turn, and when it does, the release will be sudden and powerful. LiDAR images reveal ancient scars across the land, subtle to the untrained eye, but obvious to scientists. These are the footprints of past disasters, frozen in the ground like a history book carved by nature. Finley and his colleagues believe the region's seismic silence has lulled people into a false sense of security. A place can be both beautiful and dangerous, and the Yukon is a perfect example. Visitors come for the sweeping vistas and endless wilderness, rarely realizing that deep beneath their hiking trails and scenic roads, forces are shifting that could change the landscape overnight. This hidden drama plays out all over the world. Fault lines in California, Turkey, Japan, and beyond all share one trait. They eventually break. The question is never if, but when. The Tintina fault just happens to be one of the quieter players, which in geological terms can be far more ominous than the noisy ones. And so, the clock ticks, silently, in the frozen north, counting down to a moment no one can see coming.
In 2018, the most powerful underwater earthquake occurred between East Africa and Madagascar. There was a deep rift between the Earth's crust and the mantle. Hundreds of thousands of tons of magma came out on the surface of the ocean floor. After that, a huge underwater volcano with a height of 2,700 feet was formed near the coast of Madagascar. This is almost twice the height of the Empire State Building, and all this is hidden under the water. French scientists studied this place since it had regular seismic activity. When the geologists went on an expedition to the coast of Madagascar, they discovered this giant underwater rock, which was not here until recently. With the help of geological equipment, they discovered the earthquake happened deeper than usual, below the Earth's crust. Geologists created a special observatory to monitor the situation at this site in real time. Between February and May 2019, they recorded about 17,000 seismic activities below the ocean floor. Scientists had never recorded such deep earthquakes. This suggests that there are reservoirs and drainage systems inside our planet through which magma flows. It's like the veins and vessels of a living organism. The volume of lava the volcano spews at this place can be compared with the volcanic eruptions in the hottest spots of Earth. Perhaps this is one of the most catastrophic, but at the same time, beautiful events in nature over the past few years. To understand what can be beautiful about this, let's first figure out what an underwater volcano is and how it works. Inside our planet, there are incandescent liquid metals and molten rocks containing almost all the chemical elements from the periodic table. All this hot substance is called magma, which constantly flows in the planet's bowels. Anyway, magma is lighter than the surrounding Earth's crust, so it always tries to break out upwards. Fortunately, the surface of our planet is strong enough and doesn't allow magma to splash out. But sometimes it happens, and here's why. The Earth's crust consists of many solid parts, tectonic plates. These plates collide with each other because of movement. Imagine a massive picture of puzzles. Each detail of this puzzle is a tectonic plate, and they all are constantly moving. Sometimes one puzzle gets unhooked from another. When this happens, magma immediately spills out of the resulting gap. And these places of faults with flowing magma we call volcanoes. When such a volcano erupts, a new geology begins. A splash of magma shakes the ocean floor. Lava and ash erupt from the inside of our planet. It causes a release of destructive energy of incredible power. But thanks to the water, such a catastrophe can go unnoticed. More than 70% of the seismic activity associated with volcanoes occurs underwater, and almost no one notices it. But inside the water, there's a total mess. Lava heats the water and destroys the seabed. The ocean in this area boils, and large air bubbles rise up. But the enormous pressure of hundreds of millions of gallons of water suppresses the volcano's destructive power. Molten rocks of the Earth's crust are pressed against the seabed. The ocean blocks the consequences of the disaster, but sometimes the eruption gets to the surface. Such a case occurred in 2012. Vast pieces of pumice the size of a van began to float up in the southeastern Pacific Ocean. There were hundreds, even thousands of them. It was more like a group of unknown islands. Volcanic rocks scattered in the ocean over an area twice as large as New Zealand. Scientists used deep-sea sonar apparatus on the remote control to determine the full scale of the disaster. They studied the seabed for a long time and found 14 craters that released lava. The researchers saw that more than a third of the erupted volcanic material surfaced and scattered throughout the ocean. The rest was scattered along the bottom. It destroyed all marine life in the area. However, after the eruption of volcanoes, life is reborn like a phoenix from the ashes. Volcanic ash, lava, and soil around the volcano contain many useful elements and minerals. They nourish the soil and promote the development of microorganisms not only on land but also in water. That's why there's so much vegetation, flowers, and trees around volcanoes. And underwater volcanoes can eventually form natural islands. This is a long process, resulting from which a large piece of land comes out of the water. When magma goes out, the water immediately presses it to the seabed. The eruption can go on for a long time. The released magma raises the level of the seabed. After another 100, maybe 1,000 years, a new eruption begins. New magma flows lay a new layer on the surface of the previous one. Over millions of years, layer by layer, the volcano has been growing. It's slowly rising up because of constant eruptions. Some volcanoes may go out forever, and some continue to erupt. And then, one day, the level of volcanic rock reaches the surface in the form of a huge island. After many more years, the volcano may go out, and then life appears on the formed island. The destroyed seabed area is filled with animals, trees, flowers, and plants. These volcanic islands have unique ecosystems because they develop separately from all continents. Observing such islands helps scientists understand how life on Earth was born. There are hundreds of islands around the world that have appeared because of eruptions of underwater volcanoes. You can find them in Hawaii, Indonesia, and Iceland. Many of them are inhabited by people. They build villages and small towns there. The ground on such islands is fertile. Fruits and vegetables grow there. The water is filled with fish. Such places may seem like paradise, but at the same time, it's dangerous to live there because the volcano may wake up. One of the most famous eruptions occurred on the island of Ogashima, south of Tokyo. People built a beautiful city right in the crater of an active volcano, and in May 1785, the eruption began. No one expected this to happen. At some point, thousands of birds rose and flew away from the island, and then the ground began to shake. A heavy, low sound came from beneath the underground depths. Thick smoke escaped from the top of the green volcano. The mountain threw dirt, large rocks, and red-hot pieces of magma into the sky. The disaster lasted several weeks. People managed to evacuate, and then there was a long recovery. Locals rebuilt the houses and brought the city back. Almost 250 years have passed since that moment, and during this time, the volcano has never woken up. Despite the risk of a new eruption, people continue to live there. The population is growing since this place resembles paradise, and no one wants to leave it. There are thermal springs, dense jungles with rich soil, and many fish. Meteorological and seismological services constantly monitor the volcano's activity. Movements and fractures of tectonic plates create another natural disaster: destructive tsunamis. Unlike volcanoes, huge waves are formed when seismic activity causes the crust to move vertically, up or down. When this happens, water pressure shifts on the ocean floor, which releases energy. This energy pushes the water and creates a tsunami. By the same principle, you form a small wave when you throw a stone into the water. First, a small tsunami appears. Then it picks up speed and increases in size. Its height can reach the level of a 5-story building. It's heading for the coast and accelerating to 500 miles per hour. This is almost twice as fast as a Formula One race car. Millions of gallons of water, weighing thousands of tons, are getting closer. And now the wave reaches the shore and demolishes everything in its path. Houses, trees, cars, nothing can withstand the destructive force of nature. Such tsunamis are a frequent occurrence on the coast of Japan. People have built massive shields near the land to stop the waves before they hit the shore. Still, in spite of all preparedness, somehow, nature always prevails.
You rub your eyes, trying to make sense of everything. Perfect circular holes in the bottom of the ocean floor off the coast of Big Sur in California. You have no idea how this happened, even though you're a marine biologist who's been practicing it for years. You go through some of the old records and find out that these holes have been around since the 90s. In 1999, a ship-mounted sonar conducted a survey and found 5,200 of these pockmarks, or large holes over 500 square miles, on the ocean floor. They look like moon craters underwater. You contact your team and get the robot ready to go down and explore the scene and bring back a few samples. You and the team drive to the coast and hop on the boat. You're sitting inside controlling the robot with a joystick. Your teammate sets the robot in the water and drives it down. Everything seems normal near the surface, but as the robot goes lower, the pockmarks start appearing. A bunch of boats swift past you, making you lose your balance and focus. The robot turns on the flashlight so you can see better. But as it goes lower, the resolution is less crisp. It almost reaches the bottom, and the holes are smooth and nearly perfect circular shapes. Some of these holes that were visible in the sonar reading measure more than 30 feet across and 15 feet deep. You show the rest of your teammates the images, and they're shocked. The robot continues swimming, but there appear to be more holes all around. Many of them are too small for the scanner to capture from above. These microdepressions are steep and have sort of tails going in a certain direction. It's possible that the currents underwater played a role in their shape. Everywhere the robot swims, there are new holes all around. After a couple of hours, the robot goes back to the boat with some samples. You take them back to the lab and study them. The robot clearly captures images of human trash, but the samples don't indicate anything alarming for now. Despite the fact that 1/3 of the pockets are filled with trash, there's still no explanation of how they were formed. It's late at night and the rest of your team heads back home. You're passing out in the lab, still trying to find some answers. You wake up the next day, and while cooking breakfast, you get this idea that maybe these holes are gases venting out, which could be harmful to marine life. You quickly get the robot and sail out to the ocean once more. This time, you didn't even think about calling your teammates. You place the robot in the water and get behind the screen to control it. The robot descends to the bottom of the ocean and does a survey. So far, the holes still seem to be covered with trash. But some of the holes have marine life dwelling inside, like fish and seaweed. After much scanning, it doesn't look like they're producing any bubbles, which means there aren't any gases venting out, but you're determined to find them. After a while, you reach one of those large pockmarks, and the robot starts scanning around. You find some bubbles coming from a source, but the robot can't reach it. It swims around trying to find a spot, but nothing. You bring the robot back to the lab and work on it. You attach some mechanical arms on it that can lift things and move them. You bring the robot back down to the same spot, but the bubbles aren't as frequent as before. You use the arms to move some of the trash and find out that the bubbles are being produced by a group of crabs chilling next to a pile of plastic. Bingo! The bad news is, you still don't have a clue why the microdepressions and pockmarks exist. As you try to control the robot to go back to the surface, an octopus wraps its tentacles around it, pulling the robot down. You struggle with the controls and push it to maximum power, but the suctions of the octopus are too strong to break off. It's a game of tug-of-war with the octopus and your robot. It takes the robot under a pile of trash, thinking it's lunch. But you use the arms to maneuver the robot out and swim back to the surface. You go back to the lab even more confused. The robot has collected more samples for you to study. Your eye is glued to your microscope, trying to figure out what's going on, but nothing. You decide to do a carbon dating test to determine how old these holes are. After a while, you check out the results and are even more stunned than before. They show that the holes are around 400,000 years old, so it's likely that human trash wasn't the cause for all this. You pull many all-nighters trying to figure out the truth. You gather your team once more and hold a small press conference about this. You claim that this may be something we should be extremely worried about, but you still can't tell them more than what you know. With all the brain work put together, you find out that the large pockmarks haven't changed or been active for more than 50,000 years. The newer holes were most likely created by human trash settling in the bottom of the ocean floor. The marine life gathered some of this trash like plastics and discarded fishing gear and created homes for themselves. This is why around 4,500 of the holes are newer and have trash in them. But it still doesn't answer why the holes appeared in the first place. You're back to square one. The only way to see what's really going on is to clear up the trash from underwater and study them. The story makes headlines in the local community and catches the attention of a cleanup crew. You organize a trip to the ocean and begin the extraction of all the trash. Many cleanup boats arrive and everyone drops down a net to collect the trash. You send down the robot once more to make sure the nets are hitting the right spot. As most of the trash is being collected, many marine life animals scramble and try to find a way to escape. Everyone makes sure not to hurt them. After a couple of weeks, all the holes are cleared up from the trash. You do another sonar scan from the surface and can see the holes clearer than before. But you still don't have an answer for this. You do some more research trying to see if any other holes appeared around the world. On the other side of the country is a mysterious blue hole off of Florida's Gulf Coast. You catch the nearest flight to Florida and make an appointment with the scientists in charge of the expedition. Blue holes are underwater sinkholes that open below the seabed. Just like on the surface, the underwater world also has sinkholes. This one is called the Green Banana and is 150 feet below, and the hole is 435 feet deep. You dive with some special gear with the rest of the team to a barren ocean floor, and the hole is right there in front of you, looking like an oasis in the desert. You and the rest of the scientists are surprised by the diverse marine life dwelling within. Some sea turtles swim past you, and even sharks. These ones don't harm humans. Halfway through, you reach a narrow path, which makes it difficult for humans to pass through. But everyone is careful. There are corals, sponges, mollusks around the corner. You collect some samples and go back to the lab. Blue holes in general are richer in nutrients than barren lands and host plenty of unique marine life. They're quite common and don't pose any sort of threat to anyone. After making the connections, you don't think the holes off the coast of California have anything to do with blue holes. The mystery goes on.
Now, you might want to book your dream vacation to Miami Beach as soon as you can, because this whole area might be underwater in the next 75 years. But it's not just Florida. Parts of Louisiana, California, and Washington are also expected to be among the first American states affected by sea level rise. If you live in the United States, you can check for yourself whether your address is on the list of cities that will disappear. Just search for Sea Level Rise Viewer on Google. That will take you to a tool created by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And it helps us visualize what coastal flooding might look like in the future. Now, you see that dark area in blue? Those are the sinking cities of the U.S. And by that, I mean cities that could be submerged by 2100. That's in the worst-case scenario, if ocean levels were to rise by as much as 10 feet. Hopefully, it won't come to that. As you probably know by now, sea levels are going up because the Earth is getting warmer. When the planet heats up, ice at the North and South poles melts, and all that extra water flows into the oceans. Plus, warmer water expands and takes up more space. So, between the melting ice and the expanding oceans, sea levels slowly rise over time. And that means more flooding and even the possibility of some cities ending up underwater. Right now, statistics show that sea levels are expected to rise by around 6 feet by the year 2100. The problem is that this could cause major coastal flooding, and not just during storms or heavy rains. Even on clear days, some areas could end up underwater. And that brings us to a question. How do we actually know how high ocean waters are? These days, experts can measure sea level with incredible accuracy, thanks to satellite altimeters. That's basically a special type of radar that measures how high something is. It figures out the height of the ocean by timing how long it takes for a radar pulse to travel from the satellite down to the surface of the sea and then bounce back. When scientists combine that data with the satellite's exact location, they can map even the tiniest changes in sea level all over the world. Right now, coastal flooding predictions are showing us something serious. The rate of global sea level rise has doubled over the past 3 decades. And there are plenty of tools online that help us to visualize just how big this problem could become in the future. The Sea Level Rise Viewer I mentioned earlier focuses on areas within the United States. But if you don't live there, you can still check if your address might be in danger. Just look up the interactive map from Climate Central. If you set the water level to 10 feet above the high tide line, you'll see that a lot of countries could be seriously affected. Let's take a look at South America. In Argentina, for example, rising waters could flood many parts of Buenos Aires province. Head over to Brazil, and you'll see that a lot of cities, including Rio de Janeiro, would be affected. We might have to say goodbye to that iconic wave-patterned sidewalk along Copacabana Beach, and both of the city's airports would be flooded too. Things don't look much better in Europe. Major cities like Lisbon in Portugal, Valencia in Spain, and Rome in Italy could end up partly underwater. Honestly, the worst situation in Europe is probably in the Netherlands. Right now, about a quarter of the country is literally below sea level, and nearly half of it sits just 3 feet above. So if sea levels rise, they are facing some serious risks. This entire red zone, which includes cities like Amsterdam and Rotterdam, would be below the surface if the ocean rose by 10 feet. Fortunately, the Netherlands is probably the country with the most experience in fighting back against the sea. For years, they have tackled the threat with massive infrastructure, things like giant canals, windmills, and dikes, all designed to manage the water. And thanks to their efforts, the Dutch have reclaimed about 20% of their land from the sea. That's right, they're actually expanding. Unfortunately, some countries are at much higher risk than others. According to estimates, about 5 of them are in serious danger of disappearing in the near future. First up is Fiji, a tropical paradise loved by tourists. This nation is in a tough spot because of its low-lying landscape. There, extreme warming could cause sea levels to rise by as much as 6 feet by the year 2100. It doesn't help the fact that Fiji sits right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where massive storms can quickly turn things into chaos. That means people there need to brace themselves for more frequent flooding, and they're already taking action. To protect against coastal erosion, some communities are lining the seashore with old tires to keep sand from washing away in stronger waves. Others are planting mangroves across the coast. These trees can reduce the height of waves hitting the shore by an average of 31%. Plus, they help cut down wind speeds, which really matters during cyclones. Next on the red list is Vanuatu. This chain of islands, located between Australia and Fiji, could be underwater sooner than we think, and they're already making changes. Vanuatu was one of the first Pacific nations to relocate an entire community to safer ground. Back in 2005, people living in vulnerable areas on the North Island of Tegua moved to higher land. With temperatures continuing to rise, they're bracing for even more intense tropical cyclones. That means heavier rainfall, more flooding, and a much higher risk to both homes and infrastructure. The Marshall Islands are also facing a serious risk. This country is home to around 39,000 people and lives on the opposite side of the world from the United Kingdom. It's an extremely low-lying island nation built on what's basically a coral reef. According to NASA, sea levels there have risen by almost 4 inches over the past 30 years, and they could rise by about 7.5 inches over the next 30. And that's no small thing. If nothing is done, the islands could face more than 100 days of flooding every year by the end of the century. People over there are afraid of losing their homes. Studies also show that up to 40% of the buildings in the capital city, Majuro, could end up underwater in the future. But this country isn't ready to give up, and they're reinforcing the infrastructure. The Solomon Islands are also being slowly swallowed by the sea. This region has been experiencing sea level rise at nearly 3 times the global average. Over the years, satellite images have shown that 5 vegetated reef islands have already vanished beneath the waves. On the bright side, the people there are working hard to protect their homes. They're building stone walls along the coast and planting mangroves to hold back the water. But the worst case might be Tuvalu, as it could become the first country to turn completely uninhabitable because of rising seas. This island chain, located about halfway between Australia and Hawaii, sits only about 9 feet above sea level. And in its narrowest spot, in a place called Fungafale, the land is just about 65 feet wide. You can see how vulnerable the situation is, right? I mean, even before the higher tides arrive, the country's limited farmland could be affected by salt water. These islands are a powerful example of resilience, and a reminder that sinking cities don't have to mean disappearing ones. While the challenges are real, the global response to sea level rise is growing stronger every day. Around the world, communities are adapting, innovating, and coming together to tackle the threat of rising water.
Miami's luxury towers have everything: car elevators, rooftop pools, celebrity neighborhoods, and something completely unexpected called gradual descent. A new study shows dozens of beachfront high-rises are slowly sinking into the ground. Just a couple of inches over a few years and still moving. What's going on? And is it gonna get worse? Let's find out. When you look at a map of South Florida, the city of Miami is mostly on the mainland. Just off the coast lies a long barrier island. That's Miami Beach, the stretch you see in most drone shots and travel clips. Fancy cars, the beach, the clubs, the glass towers right next to the water, that's all on this island. But it didn't always look like that. For a long time, this area was mostly older hotels and simple apartment buildings. As prices went up and richer buyers started chasing ocean views, developers began knocking those down and putting luxury high-rises in their place. Floor by floor, that island turned into a narrow wall of glass facing the Atlantic Ocean. Now, here's the problem. Miami Beach sits only 4 to 5 feet above sea level. That's barely enough height for comfort. Each fall, king tides push water up through drains and across certain streets on bright, clear days. The flooding sometimes gets so bad that locals could kayak through parking lots for fun. That might sound like a funny video, but for researchers, it raised a serious question. Could the same landscape be shifting beneath the towers too? Some buildings had already shown signs of movement, and the question became whether the ground itself was still settling under all that concrete and steel. To find out, scientists used a method called INSAR, which stands for Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar. It works by having satellites scan the same spot on Earth over and over using radar to detect tiny changes in elevation. It's like watching a tower in slow motion from space, tracking whether it holds steady or slowly sinks. Those scans stack hundreds of satellite passes over the same balcony corners and roof edges. It's the same kind of radar NASA uses to track volcanoes and ground shifts. With enough images, researchers can spot motion as small as the thickness of a credit card. Between 2016 and 2023, they focused on this section of coastline from Sunny Isles to Miami Beach. The data showed that at least 35 high-rise buildings had moved downward over that period. In some cases, the ground had dropped just under an inch. In others, it was closer to 3. That may not seem like much, but over a short time, and in structures this heavy, it means something's off. These weren't new buildings under construction. Most were already finished, which makes the continued movement unusual. In theory, they should have settled and stopped, but they didn't. So what exactly is making the ground sink under these towers? Let's look underground, specifically right under these nice-looking buildings. Beneath the island is a mix of sand and Miami limestone. It is strong enough to build on, but it behaves more like hardened coral than solid mountain rock. Water moves through it, pressure moves through it, and sometimes the ground shifts in ways engineers can't properly predict. One possible explanation is something called creep deformation. It sounds like a villain from a B-movie, but it's actually a slow-motion rearranging of particles under constant pressure. Imagine parking a heavy truck on soft ground. It makes little dents right away, but if the truck stays there for a long time, those dents slowly get deeper. The ground keeps squishing a tiny bit at a time. That slow squishing is what might be happening under these buildings. But it's not just the weight. Construction itself can wake the ground up. Pile drivers, excavation, and heavy machinery can shake the sandy layers enough that older buildings nearby start shifting again. The study also found that some of the newer towers showed stronger movement overall, likely because the soil beneath them was still adjusting after recent construction. And then there's the water. The limestone underneath acts like a sponge, soaking up water from the ocean below and the rain above. When that water moves around, it quietly eats away at the rock and shifts the sand that holds everything up. That's how the ground slowly loosens. So, we have a spongy ground, heavy buildings, and the constant shaking from construction. Plus, water flowing through the rock. Over time, all of that adds up. It presses down just a little at first, then a little more. We're only talking inches, but even small uneven shifts can be enough to make engineers nervous. So, what does this mean for the buildings and all the people making social media reels? Probably, and hopefully, nothing. At least not tomorrow. We're still far away from disaster movie scenarios. Structures won't topple over. There won't be sudden sinkholes swallowing cars. It's not how it works. But this problem does raise some eyebrows, especially after what happened just a few miles north in Surfside. In 2021, the Champlain Towers South partially collapsed. It was a huge tragedy that Miami will remember forever. That disaster didn't happen just because the ground moved. Issues kept piling up slowly over the years. Engineers discovered cracks, rust, and bad drainage. The building was falling apart from all sides, and then it was too late to do anything about it. But since then, the city has been paying more attention. Engineers are reassessing older buildings near the coast, and local officials are pushing for stricter inspections. The radar data doesn't mean a building is unsafe, but it can be an early warning, a signal that something deserves a closer look. For residents, though, there's a catch. Right now, there's no rule that says developers or building managers have to monitor ground movement with satellite scans. The study didn't involve teams going inside or taking core samples. It was just a space-based scan from above. If you zoom out from the sinking tower drama and look at that long strip of land, it's already one of the weirdest pieces of real estate on the planet. A good portion of the Miami lifestyle is literally fake land. Star Island, Palm, Hibiscus, the Venetian Chain, and a bunch of other spots started as sand at the bottom of Biscayne Bay. The bay was dredged in the 1920s. The sand was piled into islands, and developers turned those piles into celebrity neighborhoods where houses now cost tens of millions of dollars. Some of the richest people on Earth treat this area like their private game board. Fisher Island, just off South Beach, currently has the most expensive zip code in the United States, with a median listing price in the 8-figure range. A bit farther up sits Indian Creek, known as the Billionaire Bunker. It has only 41 houses, its own police force, and neighbors like Jeff Bezos and Tom Brady. One empty 1.8-acre lot there was recently listed for around $200 million, just for the dirt and the view. And all of this floats along the edge of Biscayne Bay, next to an actual national park full of beautiful marine creatures like dolphins, manatees, and sea turtles. More than 100 bottlenose dolphins live in and around the bay year-round, racing past boat docks and tall condos, like they're extras in someone else's movie. So, what happens next? Engineers keep scanning, inspectors keep checking, and everyone online keeps posting drone shots like nothing odd is happening under their feet. That's Miami, a strange blend of glamour and physics that never quite behaves. It's not a crisis, it's a maintenance routine. As long as the people in charge pay attention to quieter signals like slow dips in elevation or small structural changes, the skyline should hold. Maybe it settles a bit, maybe it stretches and groans. Now that engineers and scientists are aware of this issue, they can prepare and propose solutions. Until then, the towers will still be up and the bay will still shine bright. The whole city will keep drifting in its own style, just slightly downward. On January 26, 1700, one of the biggest earthquakes in history hit off the coast of the United States. It had a magnitude of 9, which puts it in the top 10 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. This earthquake triggered a huge tsunami and changed the coastline all the way from southern British Columbia down to northern California forever. Back then, the area wasn't very populated, but thanks to some clever research, scientists figured out exactly what happened that day by looking at old geological records, tree rings, and even some history from Japan. On the same day as the earthquake, a massive tsunami also hit Japan's eastern coast. For a long time, no one connected the two, but in the 1980s and 90s, researchers realized the tsunami in Japan had been caused by the earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. They were also able to pinpoint the exact day, January 26, 1700. They even found old trees in coastal Washington that had all perished around the winter of 1700, which matched up perfectly with the timing of the earthquake. The earthquake came from the Cascadia subduction zone, a fault where the Juan de Fuca plate slides under the North American plate. This fault stretches about 700 miles, from northern Vancouver Island in British Columbia to Cape Mendocino in California. The pressure from the moving plates builds up over time, and eventually, another big, devastating earthquake will hit the same region. It's just a matter of time. By looking at the geological records, past tsunami deposits, and signs of land level changes, scientists can figure out how often these huge earthquakes happen. Emergency planners have been preparing for the next big quake, often calling it the big one. Scientists believe earthquakes in the Cascadia subduction zone happen every 200 to 1,000 years. And since the last major one was over 300 years ago, the Pacific Northwest is definitely due for another. When it happens, the earthquake is expected to be as big as the one from 1700. But this time, it'll affect around 15 million people. The devastation will be severe. Buildings will collapse, roads and runways will crack, and bridges will fall. Communication in and out of the area will be cut off. But the worst part? The earthquake will trigger a massive tsunami that might hit parts of the Washington coast in as little as 10 minutes. It's not a matter of if, but when the Cascadia subduction zone will break. When it happens, it will be the worst disaster the US has ever faced. Worse than the Hurricane Katrina or Superstorm Sandy. It'll impact an enormous area, stretching from southern British Columbia all the way down through Oregon to northern California. That means millions and millions of people will be affected. Fairchild is considered a backup staging area for handling the aftermath of the earthquake, with Grant County International Airport in Moses Lake being the main one. For those who will survive the initial quake and tsunami, the aftermath could be just as disastrous. Aftershocks will follow, and transportation will be a mess. Roads will be damaged or completely blocked, airports will shut down, and most of the main routes, like Interstate 5, will have bridges destroyed. This means food and water supplies will be cut off, and it will be incredibly difficult for help to get in or for people to escape. Gas pipelines will most likely be damaged too, and restoring them could take anywhere from a few days inland to weeks or even months along the coast. Power outages will be widespread within 100 miles of the coast throughout the entire Pacific Northwest. And water could be out for 3 to 7 months. Even telecommunications will be down for 2 to 3 months across the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, and even parts of East Asia. The good news for eastern Washington is that it will mostly avoid the worst of it, thanks to natural barriers between the west and east sides of the state. The tsunami may hit the Columbia River Gorge, but it will lose energy quickly because of a sandbar under the river. The Cascade Mountains will absorb much of the earthquake's impact, so the east side won't feel it as strongly. And since eastern Washington won't get hit as hard, it'll be up to them to handle the aftermath of the quake. That means helping western Washington, taking in refugees from the areas that got destroyed, and delivering supplies to where they're needed. Scientists have looked at other major 8.0 to 9.0 magnitude earthquakes like the ones in Chile in 1960, Alaska in 1964, and Sumatra in 2004, and Japan in 2011. These kinds of quakes can shake the ground for anywhere between 6 to 10 minutes, and that's a long time for the ground to be shaking. Such quakes are super intense because they happen close to Earth's surface, so it's not just a quick shake. It's a long, strong one that can cause a lot of damage. If the Cascadia earthquake and tsunami were to hit tomorrow, over 13,800 people could lose their lives, and about 107,000 people could be injured. The economic toll in Washington, Oregon, and California could top 70 billion. To put that into perspective, we can compare these numbers with some other major earthquakes. In Chile's 1960 earthquake, about 1,650 people lost their lives. The 1964 Alaska quake resulted in around 140 lives lost. The 2004 Sumatra earthquake and tsunami took the lives of an estimated 280,000 people. And the 2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami caused over 20,000 casualties. Authorities know about the dangers of the Cascadia fault, but even with all the planning, no one can say for sure what will be needed when the big quake hits. Right after the earthquake and tsunami, the areas outside the immediate disaster zone won't be able to help much because roads and airports will be destroyed, and resources will be limited. How can we deal with this kind of disaster and its effects? We don't have all the answers yet. Right now, let's focus on the Cascadia subduction zone. It's a huge fault line that stretches about 620 miles from Vancouver Island to Cape Mendocino in California, sitting about 93 miles off the coast. It's like one tectonic plate is slowly sliding under another. When the plates are close to the surface, about 18 miles deep or less, they get stuck because of friction, kind of like pushing two rocks together. Over time, this creates a lot of pressure. When the pressure finally becomes too much, the plates slip, causing a massive earthquake. This is called a megathrust earthquake, and it can be huge. Below the area where the plates are stuck, there's a zone where the plates move really slowly. We're talking about just a few inches every few months. This slow movement helps to release some of the pressure, but it also builds up more pressure on the parts of the fault that are still stuck. This means that over time, it increases the chances of a huge earthquake happening. These massive quakes, called Great Subduction Zone earthquakes, can be stronger than magnitude 8.5. Megathrust earthquakes are the biggest earthquakes that happen. They can go over a magnitude of 9.0, which is insanely powerful. Just to put it in perspective, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake releases 1,000 times more energy than a 7.0 and 1,000,000 times more energy than a 5.0. These earthquakes happen when a lot of pressure builds up in a part of the fault that's locked, which means the plate can't move past each other. When that pressure gets too high, the fault finally ruptures, releasing all that built-up energy in one massive shake. The Cascadia subduction zone is super long. That's why if it were to rupture all at once, it could produce a large earthquake. Scientists have studied this region and found that about 18 miles below the surface, the fault is completely locked. The plates there aren't sliding past each other. But deeper down, the plates start to slide more smoothly, causing less friction. This is important because it tells us how much stress is building up in that locked zone, and how it could eventually lead to a major earthquake.
So, since 2000, the world has been hit with more than 1,700 earthquakes with magnitude greater than 5. Many happened around the Ring of Fire, located around the Pacific Ocean. In North America, the biggest threat is the San Andreas fault line, which can create an earthquake of a magnitude higher than any other, earning it the spine-tingling nickname, the Big One. The potential destruction of California is a terrifying prospect that could have unimaginable consequences. But the Big One is just the beginning of what's to come. Bad news! Scientists have predicted an earth-shattering event that will occur in 2030. Like it or not, there's a 70% chance that we'll experience the Big One, and it will be an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.7. The San Andreas fault line will cause the Big One, but what is scary is that we can't predict it. On the other hand, a massive earthquake occurs every 100 years. This means there's always time to prepare for a natural disaster. If we traveled back in time, we'd see a few significant earthquakes like the ones that wiped out San Francisco and Fort Tajon. Buildings made a long time ago are not quake-proof. They will collapse. Even if they survive, you should not enter them. But buildings are not the most dangerous part. You should watch out for electrical lines and gas pipes. Your hill house might be lovely, but it is extremely unsafe. During quakes, the hill can turn into a massive landslide that will destroy everything in its path. Say goodbye to road trips because all the roads will be ruined. You should have some spare water and food since you won't be able to go to the supermarket. This disaster won't be cheap. It will cost the U.S. around $200 billion to recover from the quake. At least the earthquake will not trigger tsunamis, but there's something it can cause more damage than the Big One. The notorious Cascadia subduction zones start in California and ends up all the way in Vancouver, Canada. The San Andreas fault line is nothing compared to this zone. It can wipe the whole coast off the face of the Earth, an example of hyperbole. Subduction zones are tectonic plates forced to be one under the other and constantly pulling apart. One is called the North American Plate and the other is the Juan de Fuca Plate. Zones like these are not to be messed with, since they are terrifying hotspots for earthquake activity and extremely dangerous because they cause massive underwater quakes. But they are underwater, so what can they do to us? Well, they can cause giant tsunamis, flooding cities, and destroying the coastline. Right now, the most active zone is the Ring of Fire. The Cascadia zone might be less active, but it is like a sleeping beast that can wake up and destroy everything in its path, causing a groundbreaking earthquake. The last time all this stress was released was in the year 1700. Unlike the San Andreas quake, this one will cause massive tsunamis and much bigger shocks. Let's hope you'll be camping in an open field at that time, because most buildings and bridges will likely be destroyed. Also, be ready for the aftershocks, as they'll be devastating. Nature won't be spared either. Landslides will change animals' habitats. Even our homes will be changed forever. Luckily, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and scientists are doing everything they can to ensure our safety. New rules are implemented. Every new building must be able to withstand massive shocks. They're developing modern warning systems, and every new infrastructure must follow strict quake-proof guidelines. The Juan de Fuca and the North American plates are locked together, but they won't stay like that forever. When they unlock, get ready for a massive shake. The closer you are to the epicenter, the more damage you'll experience. But even if you are lucky to be far away, you may still feel the ground shaking for some time. Now, if we compare the Cascadia subduction zone and the San Andreas fault, we'll see how much more dangerous the Cascadia zone is. In 1994, there was an enormous 6.7 magnitude earthquake in the Northridge area, close to the San Andreas fault. Sadly, many people didn't make it, and some were injured. Back then, buildings were not strong and earthquake-proof, and many of them were damaged. The Cascadia subduction zone can potentially cause a magnitude 9 earthquake. A magnitude 6 quake has the power of around 44 million pounds of dynamite, but a magnitude 9 has the power of 44 trillion pounds of dynamite. The strongest ever recorded quake was in Chile. Its magnitude measured 9.5, and it destroyed most everything. So let's say you've survived the quake, but the struggle is far from over. Soon after, a massive tsunami will strike, with waves that might reach up to 100 feet in some areas. That's so unlike the San Andreas earthquake, which can't produce any significant waves. So say goodbye to your beautiful garden, since salt water will destroy trees and plants, changing the environment for a period of time. The only positive thing will be you won't need Halloween decorations, because all those dried-out trees will resemble a ghost forest. The combination of waves, quakes, and the sheer size of the area will make this natural disaster much more dangerous than any caused by the San Andreas fault or the so-called Big One. A quake similar to this happened around 300 years ago. Many more have been recorded in the past 3,500 years, proving that they continually occur every 400 to 600 years. So, technically, we have around 100 to 300 years before the next big one hits. We still have no idea how exactly the Cascadia subduction zone works, because we discovered it in 1970. This zone is super scary because it can cause big earthquakes. It was found by accident when researchers studied the Ring of Fire. They wanted to know if this area had caused any trouble in the past years, and the proof was under their noses. In Washington, there is a horror forest where nothing has been growing for years. When researchers tested the soil, they found a tremendous amount of salt. They put 2 and 2 together and concluded that a massive tsunami had been the reason. Experts still didn't know when the forest was destroyed, but Japan kept records of a gigantic earthquake that had a similar effect. It was the one that happened in the year 1700. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the next one will occur in 2050. You must know how to survive the Canadian earthquakes and make it out unscathed, so listen carefully. Those who live in this area have almost no experience with earthquakes like this one. Surviving the quake is relatively easy, but the tsunami coming afterwards is the real danger. After the shake, find the highest ground and go there. Only bring the essentials, like food and water. Yeah, leave your baseball card collection at home. After the first hit, don't try to go down. Seismologists say that most likely there will be a few more waves, and they have proven this. On the 22nd of May, 1960, seismologist Jerry Eston and his 4 friends went to Hawaii to see an expected tsunami that was to happen around midnight. They set up their gear on Wailuku Bridge with an escape route planned. This bridge had been destroyed in the previous tsunami, but the new one was much taller and better. After midnight, the water was 4 feet above the average level. The second wave hit a half hour after midnight, and the water rose another 9 feet by 1 a.m. The water started going down and dropped by 7 feet, but the horror was far from over. Next, they saw a wave that was around 20 feet tall. This shows us that tsunamis are unpredictable, and we should listen to experts to stay safe.
While you're watching this video, pieces of continents are slowly breaking off from below and are pulled down into the oceanic mantle, a hot, mostly solid layer that moves slowly under the seafloor. As soon as these fragments reach the mantle, they can trigger volcanic eruptions in parts of the ocean where there are no volcanoes. Plus, when continents break apart, it happens not only at the surface, but also deep down. But more on that later. This process can continue for tens of millions of years. The new study shows that Earth's insides are even more dynamic than we thought. It also explains why many volcanic islands, including Christmas Island in the Northeast Indian Ocean, contain unusually high levels of certain chemical elements. The thing is, these elements are normally only found in continental crust. Well, scientists did suspect that these elements showed up because some powerful forces deep inside the Earth took old, recycled pieces of rock and mixed them into the mantle. This process works a bit like when you mix together ingredients for cake batter. But before, researchers believed those elements came from two main sources: sediment that sank into the mantle as oceanic plates got pushed down, or from mantle plumes. Those are columns of hot rock rising up from deep inside Earth. However, these explanations don't fit all observations. In some volcanic areas, there's almost no sign that the crust has been recycled. In other places, the mantle seems to cool and too close to the surface to be affected by the rising hot rock. Scientists used to wonder how this could happen. Now we know that some of the material in those regions comes from pieces of continents that sink deep into the mantle, and these pieces affect the volcanoes that form above. The new study also suggests a curious idea. Continents don't just break apart at the surface, they peel away from below too. And this can happen over much greater distances than scientists thought before. Researchers used simulations to figure out how continents and the mantle behaved when stretched by tectonic forces. Their work is built on earlier research showing that when continents split, deep, powerful forces inside our planet create a mantle wave. This wave moves along the base of the continent at depths of about 90 to 125 miles. The wave moves extremely slowly, about 1/millionth of the speed of a snail, and gradually strips material from the roots of the continents. These peeled-off fragments are then carried sideways, sometimes more than 620 miles, into the oceanic mantle. Once there, they can trigger volcanic eruptions in the ocean for tens of millions of years. The research also shows that the mantle continues to feel effects of continental breakup long after the continents themselves have separated. Even after a new ocean basin forms, the mantle keeps moving, reorganizing and transporting enriched material far from where it originally came. To make this conclusion, researchers studied geochemical data from different parts of the Earth, including the Indian Ocean Seamount Province. That's a chain of volcanic formations that appeared after the supercontinent Gondwana had broken apart over 100 million years ago. Their computer models and chemical tests showed that right after the supercontinent Gondwana broke apart, a lot of magma with unusual chemicals pushed up to the surface. Over millions of years, this chemical signature slowly faded as less material came up from under the continent. The most unexpected discovery is that this happened without any help from those deep, hot columns of rock scientists used to think were needed. Now, to get an even clearer picture, let's sneak a peek into our planet's insides. Earth is about 4.6 billion years old. It was born from a huge cloud of dust and gas that slowly cooled, shrank, and hardened into the planet we know today. As it cooled, Heavy metals like iron and nickel sank to the center, and lighter, rocky materials floated upward. This created the Earth's layered structure, with each layer having its own unique properties. The crust is like Earth's skin. It's our planet's outermost layer, made of solid rock. It's broken into huge pieces called tectonic plates that slowly drift over time. There are two kinds of crust: oceanic crust and continental crust. The oceanic crust is about 4 to 6 miles thick. It's covered with a thin layer of sediments like sand, clay, and shells. Below that are dense rocks like basalt, rich in magnesium. As for the continental crust, it's thicker than oceanic crust and is located under continents. It's made of lighter rocks than oceanic crust. Beneath the crust is the mantle. It makes up more than 75% of Earth's volume. The top of the mantle is pretty rigid, but deeper down it becomes soft and partially molten, which allows it to flow slowly. This flow is what moves the tectonic plates. At the center of the Earth lies the core. It's made mostly of iron and nickel and has two distinct layers, the outer core and the inner core. The outer core is a liquid layer of iron and nickel. It's insanely hot, up to 10,800 degrees Fahrenheit, as hot as the surface of the sun. The outer core also generates Earth's magnetic field, which protects us from harmful solar radiation. The inner core is solid because of the crushing pressure inside the planet. It's also made of iron and nickel. Now, the Earth's outer shell, called the lithosphere, is made up of the crust and the uppermost part of the mantle. It's broken into large pieces, called tectonic plates. There are a few super large plates and many smaller ones. 6 of the major plates are named after the continents they carry, like the North American, African, and Antarctic plates. But even those smaller plates play an important role. For example, the tiny Juan de Fuca plate is responsible for many of the volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. The plates are moving like a jumble of old conveyor belts. They move very slowly, about 1 to 2 inches per year. But over millions of years, this movement shapes the face of our planet. Most earthquakes, volcanoes, and mountain building happen where plates meet, pull apart, or slide past each other. There are 3 main types of plate boundaries: convergent, when plates move toward each other; divergent, when plates move apart; and transform. That's when plates slide sideways past each other. When tectonic plates collide, the crust crumples and buckles, forming mountain ranges. About 55 million years ago, India crashed into Asia, slowly creating the Himalayas, the tallest mountains on Earth. The collision continues today, so the mountains are still rising. Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth, may even grow a tiny bit taller over time. At some convergent boundaries, an oceanic plate dives under a land plate in a process called subduction. The land above lifts up, forming mountains, and the sinking plate melts and triggers volcanic eruptions. This is how some mountains in the Andes of South America were formed. When 2 oceanic plates collide, one usually slides beneath the other, creating deep ocean trenches, like the Mariana Trench in the North Pacific, the deepest point on Earth. These collisions can also form underwater volcanoes that eventually rise above the ocean and turn into island chains, such as Japan. At divergent boundaries, tectonic plates move away from each other. In the oceans, magma from deep in the mantle rises to fill the gap. This creates underwater mountains and volcanoes along the seam. This process renews the ocean floor and slowly widens the ocean basins. By the way, a single mid-ocean ridge system connects all the world's oceans, making it the longest mountain range on Earth. On land, when plates pull apart, they form giant valleys, such as the Great Rift Valley in Africa. If this stretching continues over millions of years, East Africa could split off to become a new landmass. One famous example of transform boundaries is the San Andreas Fault in California. Unlike convergent or divergent boundaries, transform boundaries usually don't create mountains or oceans. but the grinding motion can cause powerful earthquakes, such as the 1906 earthquake that destroyed much of San Francisco. A magnitude 15 earthquake has the potential to completely destroy our planet and evaporate all the water in a matter of seconds, leaving Earth uninhabitable. Over 500,000 earthquakes happen annually, but none have a magnitude of 15. 90% of quakes occur in the terrifying Ring of Fire zone located around the Pacific Ocean. The ground there is like jello. It shakes almost constantly. The most powerful earthquake to have ever struck Earth had a magnitude of 9.5. That much power can lengthen or shorten the day. But there's probably an earthquake in the confines of your own home now caused by a speck of dust landing on a table. But it has a power of negative 15 magnitudes. Earthquakes happen when tectonic plates move. They're like Lego pieces that are not properly secured, and when they move up, down, or hit one another, the ground also moves, triggering earthquakes. This tectonic energy acts like a battery. It stores energy for a long time, up to 500 years. When this stored energy is released in a sudden burst, the consequences are horrifying. Even the strongest structures submit to this relentless force that leaves a trail of destruction in its path. In some instances, earthquakes can even trigger tsunamis, amplifying the chaos. Such a crazy amount of power can split the ground open and cause severe damage. The strength of an earthquake is measured by the Richter scale, but now it's being replaced by the moment magnitude scale. When there's an earthquake, we hear about how strong it is. It's usually from 1 to 10. Luckily, we haven't had a Richter scale earthquake yet. The most powerful earthquake to have ever happened in modern history occurred in Chile in the 60s. It was around 9.5 on the Richter scale, and it altered Earth's rotation and messed up the length of the day by around 2 milliseconds. It also triggered a massive tsunami and affected a vast area of 155,000 square miles. The Richter scale doesn't actually have a limit. Still, anything above 25 doesn't need measuring, because if that ever happened, we would simply turn into dust, and nobody would care to measure this disaster. As we said, the strongest earthquake had a magnitude of 9.5. If this magnitude had been just 0.5 stronger, it would have created a ruptured line 2,174 miles long. That is almost 7 times the size of Wyoming. A magnitude 11 earthquake would create a crack halfway around the world. Massive tsunamis would hit coastal areas, destroying everything, and Earth would get into a massive environmental crisis. If you love hiking, you would have new mountains to explore, created by the terrifying earthquake. Even the temperature would increase because of volcanic eruptions and the resulting greenhouse gases. It would turn our planet into a hot oven. The safest places would be far away from any buildings, seas, oceans, and mountains where there would be a low chance of a landslide. Countries unprepared for earthquakes would be totally destroyed, and cities would turn into piles of rubble and dust. Going up on the Richter scale would only make things worse. But don't worry, an earthquake of that power is impossible. Earth's crust doesn't have enough energy to produce such earthquakes. But there is something that has much more power and can produce mega-earthquakes. Asteroids are powerful enough to destroy our planet, as we all know from the dinosaur era. That asteroid was around 6 miles long, and it caused massive damage to the planet. It triggered earthquakes that shook the ground constantly for months. These terrifying quakes were about 50,000 times stronger than the Chile earthquake. They also triggered a tsunami that was 30,000 times more powerful than the Indian Ocean tsunami. And the latter was one of the most devastating tsunamis to have ever struck Earth. The earthquakes caused by the asteroid had a magnitude of 11, making it the most powerful and scariest natural disaster ever. And let's hope it stays that way. The Indian Ocean tsunami affected only certain areas of the world. Meanwhile, the asteroid tsunami affected every part of the world and had 33-foot-tall waves. Even if you had traveled to the most remote place on Earth, you wouldn't have been able to hide from this Grim Reaper. A 15 magnitude earthquake wouldn't be 15% stronger than the Chile earthquake. The scale doesn't work like that. It would be around 100 million times more powerful than a 9.5 magnitude quake. It could make all the water on Earth evaporate, leaving us devastated and without any H2O to survive. All ecosystems would collapse, all food chains would be broken, and only some super strong bacteria would probably survive the impossible. That is only a fraction of the frightening things that could happen. The ocean is like the AC for our planet. Without it, Earth would be super hot. The ocean also serves as a shield from the sun's powerful rays. It acts as a heat absorber and cools Earth. Scientists think that the most dangerous thing would be the inability of Earth's crust to survive the violent shakes of the 15 magnitude earthquake. If our planet miraculously survived and didn't turn into dust, there would be massive openings in its crust. The ground would become gelatinous. It would randomly move up, down, left, and right, and no building would survive that. Our civilization would be brought back to the Stonehenge era. Tectonic movements like this are devastating. A similar thing happened in Japan when tectonic plates moved 165 feet from each other and then snapped back together, creating a 9 magnitude earthquake. No place on Earth is immune to this bone-chilling natural phenomenon. Still, certain places have higher chances of being destroyed than others, like the Ring of Fire, where 90% of earthquakes happen. This is a place where earthquakes are almost everyday occurrences. The Ring of Fire is located in the Pacific Ocean. It forms a ring around the continents that surround the Pacific. There, several tectonic plates meet, creating highly unstable ground. To make the problem much more terrifying, 75% of active volcanoes are located in this area. 90% of dormant volcanoes are also there, making this place extremely dangerous. Scientists carefully study this region to find a way to predict when the next earthquake might strike. The Ring of Fire is not the only place at risk of earthquakes. In California, along the San Andreas fault line, 2 tectonic plates have been storing power for more than 200 years. The San Andreas fault is 715 miles long and has the potential for a massive earthquake. This region has its fear of violent earthquakes like the one that happened in San Francisco in 1906. It had a magnitude of 7.8 on the Richter scale. Scientists' predictions are terrifying. They say that the chance of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake is very high in the area. If all hell starts to break loose, you should know how to survive. Avoid anything that might fall on you, like windows, closets, or unstable ceilings. The official phrase from emergency experts is drop, cover, and hold on. Stay low to the ground. Hide under something stable like a table, and remain there until the shaking stops. Make sure to stay in your shelter for another minute or two, just in case there are aftershocks or loose debris. Use your nose and smell for gas. If you do smell it, don't turn the lights on or do anything that might ignite it. Stay strong and be safe.
There is a powerful force hiding underground where tectonic plates meet, and one forces another under it. This happens in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Strain builds over centuries. The tension is unbearable until the megathrust awakens. The Earth shakes with a magnitude that can exceed 9 points, more powerful than any other earthquake. When the seafloor suddenly gets pushed up fast, it sends a huge ripple across the water, and a tsunami of huge force is out. These waves are called teletsunamis, and they cross entire ocean basins, ready to take over coastlines thousands of miles away. The thrust fault stretches over 600 miles. The Earth is not just shaking, it feels like it's tearing apart. This is the power of a megathrust earthquake. Those caught in its path will have to fight for their lives. Japanese authorities recently had to issue their first ever mega-quake advisory. It happened because of a strong tremor on the edge of the Nankai trough ocean floor zone. In the end, most of the warnings were lifted, and there wasn't much damage from the 7.1 magnitude earthquake. Parts of southwestern Japan started to shake, and the superfast trains in Japan slowed down to stay safe, which made travel slower for everyone. But everyone is staying alert as they know about the risk of a megathrust earthquake that could happen within the next few decades in the Nankai trough. The tectonic plate under the Philippine Sea is slowly sliding underneath the land where Japan is, moving just a few inches every year. The last big earthquakes from this area happened in 1944 and 1946, both with a magnitude of 8.1. These quakes have caused a lot of destruction in the country. The next megathrust earthquake in the region, if it does happen, could be between a magnitude 8 and 9. Scientists still can't agree on how likely this mega-earthquake is to happen, but it could be up to 80% certainty. On the other side of the Pacific, scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey have studied a dangerous area along the U.S. West Coast. It's called the Cascadia subduction zone, and it stretches from northern California to northern Vancouver Island in Canada. Over the past 14,200 years, there have likely been at least 30 big earthquakes in this region. One major quake happens every 500 years on average. But for a long time now, Cascadia has been quiet, and it worries scientists. They think this might be because the area is locked, meaning the tectonic plates are stuck together and building up a lot of pressure. Eventually, the part of the seafloor could suddenly break and move by several feet. The shaking would be just 5 minutes, but it would create a powerful tsunami as the seafloor shifts that would last for 10 hours. If it happens, it's going to be the worst natural disaster in the country's history, according to experts. The ground on some inland hills could turn into something like quicksand. This would cause the hillsides to slide and crumble, taking down roads and bridges. Around 620,000 buildings could be badly damaged or even collapse, including about 100 hospitals and 2,000 schools. People in Washington state might have to take care of themselves without help for 2 weeks, finding food, water, and shelter on their own. Scientists are studying slow slip events, where the tectonic plates move very slowly over weeks or months, releasing some energy but not enough to stop a big one. Every time the magnitude of an earthquake goes up by just one number, the energy it releases is 40 times bigger. So we'd need about 1 million small earthquakes every day for 500 years straight to release the same energy as one huge magnitude 9 earthquake. But these small earthquakes might be clues that a bigger earthquake is coming. To better monitor the Cascadia fault, experts are mapping the fault more accurately and adding better monitoring tools offshore. Scientists receive over $10 million to install seismic sensors and seafloor pressure gauges on a fiber optic cable off the coast of Oregon. The goal is to be ready to warn people and potentially save lives when a big earthquake strikes. A sharp megathrust earthquake happened in this part of the world in 1964. It went down in history as the Great Alaska Earthquake and had a magnitude of 9.2. It lasted for more than 4 minutes, making it the most powerful earthquake in the history of the U.S. and North America. The ground shook so hard that it caused huge cracks and landslides. In Anchorage, many houses, buildings, and roads were destroyed because they weren't built to handle such a big earthquake. In some places, the land was permanently changed. For example, the coastline near Kodiak and Hinchinbrook Island was lifted by 30 feet. In other areas, like Gerwood and Portage, the ground sank by 8 feet. They had to rebuild roads higher so they wouldn't be flooded by the time. A huge 27-foot tsunami wiped out the entire village of Chiniga. Many coastal towns were heavily damaged, not just by the earthquake, but also by tsunamis and the fires that followed. After the main earthquake, there were thousands of smaller aftershocks for months. A moderate earthquake of magnitude 4.4 shook Los Angeles in August 2024. Once it was over, the LA Fire Department checked around the city and didn't find any major damage or anyone hurt. In the nearby city of Pasadena, which is close to the earthquake's epicenter, a water pipe burst inside City Hall and everyone had to leave the building. Thankfully, there was no danger of a tsunami. The best we can do to avoid panic in such situations is to be prepared. Japan is one of the places on Earth where earthquakes happen the most, because it sits on the edges of 4 tectonic plates. Around 1,500 of these earthquakes each year are noticeable. Because of this, the people in Japan have learned to live with earthquakes. The 1950 law set a rule that buildings should be able to handle earthquakes up to a magnitude 7 without falling apart. An update 30 years later said that buildings should only have minor damage in such earthquakes and still work as usual. But if an earthquake is even stronger, the law says the building's main job is to not collapse and save people's lives. At the most basic level, buildings are made stronger with thicker beams, pillars, and walls so they can handle shaking better. Another technique is placing special pads made from materials like rubber at the base of a building. Some buildings are even built on thick layers of padding that separate them from the ground completely, which helps protect them during an earthquake. A skyscraper might sway back and forth a lot, moving up to 5 feet. To stop it from getting damaged, engineers can add something called dampers every second floor all the way to the top. These dampers are like giant bicycle pumps, but instead of air, they're filled with liquid. When the building shakes, the dampers push against the liquid inside them. Even though the liquid doesn't squish very much, it can still absorb some of the shaking. When they're building tall skyscrapers, engineers try to make the structure as simple and balanced as possible. This means having each floor the same height and placing the support columns evenly. But sometimes, architects who design skyscrapers don't want to make these compromises because they have creative ideas for how the building should look. Then they have to find compromise solutions. For example, Tokyo's Skytree Tower, one of the tallest buildings in the world, is designed in a futuristic style but also includes special features to protect it from earthquakes. It has a central pillar, like in traditional Japanese pagodas, and seismic dampers that help absorb the energy from an earthquake, keeping the building safe.
Not an earthquake, but a mega-earthquake could happen in Japan. It's scarier, bigger, and more destructive than ordinary tremors. However, the problem is that it will occur underwater, which means it will trigger a giant tsunami 100 feet high. A column of water nearly as high as a 10-story building will collapse on coastal cities, wiping out hundreds of houses. The water flow can destroy everything in its path like a bowling ball that knocks down pins. And then another wave may come, and another one. Anyone who is at risk should be on their guard. How to survive? You'll find out later in this video. But first, let's find out what a mega-earthquake is. This is an earthquake with a magnitude 9 or more. This is a very rare phenomenon, and it depends not on the power of the shock, but on the length of the fault where it occurs. The longer the fault, the stronger the earthquake. But what are these faults? These are cracks in the rocks of the Earth's crust that move relative to each other. Imagine a large puzzle where every detail is a giant tectonic plate. When one part of the puzzle moves away from another or when they collide, that's when earthquakes begin. If the fault between the parts is long, then the magnitude of the earthquake is great. The largest mega-earthquake ever recorded occurred on May 22, 1960, in Chile. The fault was almost 1,000 miles long. It's almost half the way between Chicago and Los Angeles. And now, a similar mega-earthquake can happen, underwater. That's how it all started. Last year, on August 8th, at 4:42 p.m., an earthquake with a magnitude of 7.1 occurred in southern Japan. The tremors appeared off the coast of the mainland island of Kyushu. Everyone was terrified as they expected a large tsunami to appear. But fortunately, they faced only a small wave. It collapsed on the shore, but didn't destroy buildings. About 15 people got hurt, which is sad, of course. But it could have been worse. It seemed that the disaster had passed. The residents breathed a sigh of relief. However, after that, the Japan Meteorological Agency sent a warning about a possible mega-earthquake that could be incredibly devastating. A previous earthquake of 7.1 magnitude could be a harbinger of an impending catastrophe, a disaster that could affect 250,000 people. As soon as people heard this, they ran to buy groceries. Increased demand and a slight panic led to shortages of rice and several other basic products. People were stocking up on food and preparing for the worst. But a week later, the Japan Meteorological Agency canceled the warning. It turned out that the small tsunami on Kyushu Island was not a harbinger. No one knows whether a mega-earthquake and tsunami will happen in this region, but the chances are very high. To understand the nature of this danger, we need to dive underwater in a place called the Nankai Trough. It is a 500-mile-long underwater fault that runs almost parallel to the Pacific coast of Japan. This is where the two giant sections of the Earth's crust meet, the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian Plate. And the Philippine Plate is subducting and slowly slipping under the Eurasian Plate, on which Japan is partly located. During this movement, the plates get stuck, accumulating energy. Afterward, when they move and align again, they release a powerful burst of energy. And this energy is capable of causing one of the most powerful earthquakes in the world. Experts report that the probability of a mega-earthquake and a tsunami is about 80%. Over the past 1,400 years, mega-earthquakes have occurred every 100 to 200 years in this region. The last time this happened in Japan was in 1946. The entire country felt a powerful tremor that destroyed 36,000 houses in the southern part of Honshu Island. Every year, the probability of a repeat of this disaster increases by 1%. And do you know how many years have passed? 79. According to experts, a mega-earthquake with a magnitude of 8 to 9 can trigger a tsunami that will flood small islands off the coast of Japan. And areas with large populations on the islands of Honshu and Shikoku can be flooded in minutes. Hundreds of thousands of people are at risk. It can be billions and even trillions of dollars worth of damage. According to some reports, about 530,000 people may lose their homes. To save lives, the country needs to carry out a large-scale evacuation, but the problem is that no one knows the exact date. In general, no one in the world can predict in advance when the next big earthquake will occur. In the case of the Nankai Trough, it can happen in a few days, or a few years, or even centuries. So, what should people do? Prepare. Japan has been experiencing earthquakes for a long time, so the country has learned to survive a disaster with minimal losses. Almost every building in Japan is equipped with dampers, which are devices that suppress any vibrations and make houses more resistant to shaking. In addition, on the shores of Japan, residents have built long and high shields that don't allow powerful waves to break through to land. Japan also has an advanced earthquake warning system. It's impossible to predict powerful seismic activity in a few days or weeks, but it's possible to detect small tremors that may portend an impending earthquake. Special devices monitor seismic signals and transmit the data to certain programs. Then, they evaluate the magnitude and intensity of the tremors and send warnings to people's phones. This can save seconds and even minutes for locals to reach the nearest shelter in time. These systems are also used to slow down the speed of trains, to stop work at factories, hospitals, and office buildings. It's much safer for a train driver to slow down during an earthquake than to rush forward at full speed. But what if you're on the street and you can't hear your phone messages? How to act in case of disaster? This applies not only to Japan, but also to any place where a tsunami or earthquake may occur. To survive a tsunami, you need to prepare for it long before a big wave hits. It's very important to have good relations with neighbors. Be friendly with them, help them, and treat them well. In times of trouble or disaster, it's great to have people with whom you have a good relationship. They can help you get out of a difficult situation, and you can also help them. Be kind and compassionate to people. This way, it's much easier to survive any disaster. Prepare a backpack with necessities in advance. These are a first aid kit, canned food, flashlights, a battery-powered radio, and bottled water. All this will not only save your life, but will also help other people in trouble. So if you feel an earthquake start, immediately run for cover. If you're at home, try to stand against a wall closest to the center of the building, or crawl under heavy furniture that stands firmly on the floor, such as a desk or a regular table. Stay away from windows and front doors, and never use an elevator. If you're on the street, don't come close to power lines and any objects that may fall. During a tsunami, you may need to get as high as possible to avoid getting swallowed by water. Stay as far away from the shore as you can, and don't go down until you're sure it's safe. But how can you find out about an approaching wave if you haven't received the warning? When a tsunami approaches the shore, you will hear a roar similar to the rumble of a passing train or plane. If there's no elevation nearby, then try to get to the upper floors. It must be at least the 3rd floor, but it has to be a building that can resist a tsunami, such as a massive house made of concrete. If there are no such high buildings nearby, try to climb a massive tree. When the disaster is over, look around and find those you can help. Listen to messages from rescuers via radio or TV. If all is well, then you can deal with the consequences. Yes, there's a lot of work ahead, but you've survived and helped others survive. And that's the most important thing.
It was April 2025 when geologists went back to Yellowstone's Norris Geyser Basin for the first time this year. And while doing their usual check, they realized that something was different this time. Where there used to be just a boring patch of ground, now there was a giant hole, about 13 feet wide, filled with weird, milky, light blue water. Everyone was terrified. Was it the sign that the Yellowstone supervolcano was ready to erupt? If so, it would be a worldwide disaster, the kind that destroys cities. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, if such an eruption occurred, the aftereffects would be felt all over the world. To start, the areas immediately surrounding Yellowstone would experience pyroclastic flows. That's the lava that erupts out of a volcano, including a high-density mix of volcanic gas, ash, pumice, and hot lava blocks. Those flows would destroy everything they touch, and an eruption of Yellowstone would send them into Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. Areas further away from Yellowstone would escape the flows, but they would experience falling ash. It would come down heavily in the states closest to the epicenter. The ash would be especially dangerous for anyone breathing it in. The weight of the ash would also pose a serious threat. It would smother crops and collapse buildings as it piles up. Tragic consequences would be countless, but we'll talk about them later, because soon after the discovery, the weird pit surprised even experts. Geologists found rocks scattered everywhere. Some were about a foot across, and all of them were dusted with gray mud. This mud matched the walls of the new spring. It was like the place had simply exploded, but nobody had actually seen it happen. The team checked old satellite images to figure out when it appeared. In December 2024, the ground was totally normal. By January 6, 2025, a little dip had formed. And by February 13th, that water-filled hole was finally there. But the weird thing was that the sensors that usually pick up major hydrothermal explosions didn't detect anything. There was no giant blast or warning signs. Later, it turned out that this puzzling opening in the ground hadn't just popped up in one huge explosion. Instead, it formed from a bunch of smaller bursts over time. Little explosions first threw out rocks, then mud, and eventually created the pit. With time, it filled with silica-rich water. That was a huge relief for everyone. Yellowstone sits on a supervolcano, and its big explosions are a nightmare scenario. Luckily, this time, it was just a slow-building, small-scale explosion. It was dramatic, sure, but totally manageable. You see, Yellowstone National Park is full of geysers, hot springs, and all kinds of natural landscapes. But under the surface, things get incredibly intense, all because of the supervolcano. Now, supervolcanoes are often extremely large. They often have no cone at all, since they're typically the remains of gigantic magma chambers. Once, those chambers flared up, leaving behind a caldera. They're usually located over hot spots. It's no surprise that supervolcanoes can produce super eruptions, and when they do it, they blow more than 240 cubic miles of ash, molten rock, and hot gases up into the air. In other words, 4 super eruptions could fill the Grand Canyon to the brim. Supervolcanoes form when huge volumes of scorching hot magma escape from deep underground. This magma rises close to the surface but can't break through Earth's crust. So, a pressurized pool of bubbling magma gathers at a depth of only several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. And then, bang, a super eruption occurs. Now, back in 2015, researchers at the University of Utah mapped out the main magma chamber of the Yellowstone supervolcano and were shocked by its size. And then, they found another one below it. Together, these underground magma pools could hold enough molten rock to fill the Grand Canyon 11 times. All that magma pushes up on the ground above, which is why Yellowstone rises about an inch or two every year. That slow lift might not sound like much, but combine it with the fact that Yellowstone is still an active volcano and has a volcanic explosivity index of 8, and it's enough to make you wonder what could happen if things went south. And yes, Yellowstone has indeed been a bit jumpy in recent years. In March 2023, there were 354 earthquakes in the area. Most were tiny, but the biggest hit a magnitude 3.7, part of a swarm of 106 quakes. Now, before you freak out, experts from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory say there's no need to panic. No eruption is coming anytime soon. Volcanoes don't stick to a schedule. Just because Yellowstone hasn't erupted in a long time doesn't mean it's about to blow. The park is stable for now, but scientists are keeping a close eye on everything underground, the quakes, the rising ground, and even temperature changes, just to be safe. The superhot plume of magma, a hotspot under Yellowstone, has been churning for 17 million years. The Earth's crust slowly moved over it, making the hotspot leave a trail of volcanoes stretching more than 450 miles along the Snake River Plain. Most of those ancient ones are now buried under layers of lava and sediment. In just the past 2.1 million years, Yellowstone has unleashed 3 cataclysmic eruptions, so massive they managed to reshape the land. Each explosion sent pyroclastic flows, rivers of searing hot rock, ash, and pumice racing outward for miles. The debris piled up in layers hundreds of feet thick, some forming solid lava-like rock. When those eruptions emptied the underground magma chambers, the roof collapsed, forming the massive calderas we see today. Even after those mega-eruptions, Yellowstone didn't stop. Between 180,000 and 70,000 years ago, enormous rhyolite lava flows, sometimes over 144 cubic miles, poured out. Some flows followed north-south vent lines. The West Yellowstone flow erupted around 110,000 years ago. The Nez Perez Creek flow followed 160,000 years ago. If you stand at Madison Junction on the caldera's northwest rim, you can see it, a cliff that formed when the Lava Creek Tuff eruption collapsed the land 640,000 years ago. And inside the caldera, you'll see the hardened lava flows snaking across the floor. Figuring out when a supervolcano might blow is like being able to read nature's warning signals. Thousands of years before a massive eruption, the heat underground starts building, and the magma chambers become like ticking pressure cookers. Little signs start showing up. Gas bubbles escape as the pressure shifts, and earthquakes shake the ground. The land above slowly rises. Cracks appear. Hot springs and geysers start acting up, heating even more than usual. Now, what would happen if Yellowstone erupted? Remember those pyroclastic flows we talked about before? They can contain 2 parts: the lower flow of the hot lava that moves at ground level, and a cloud of ash that follows above the lava level. So the two of them would devastate huge areas. The ash would even reach Europe within 3 to 4 days of the eruption, but it wouldn't be so bad there. After that, it would only take around 2 to 3 weeks before cooler temperatures set in around the globe, all thanks to the sulfur gas that would get to the upper atmosphere after the eruption. Scientists predict that global temperatures would drop by up to 10 to 12 degrees. These consequences could last for 6 to 10 years, putting an end to monsoons, which could cause widespread famine in Asia. Scared? Well, don't be. The good news is that scientists don't believe that the sleeping giant under Yellowstone National Park will wake up in our lifetime. Experts say the next Yellowstone eruption won't likely happen for hundreds of thousands of years. And even then, it may not be that bad, because scientists have discovered that the magma lurking within Yellowstone is actually split up amongst 4 different chambers. Not only that, but some of the reservoirs of magma are likely to cool down and solidify, lessening the chances of an eruption. So, while an eruption does sound like it would change the landscape of the world, it's very unlikely to happen anytime soon. Okay, Smarty Pants, answer this one. Do you know what earthquake magnitudes actually feel like? Well, at magnitude 1, you wouldn't notice a thing. At 3, you might slosh your coffee if you're drinking. At 5, things can start to shake off shelves, and it definitely gets your heart racing. But at 7.5, that's when the ground itself rips, buildings sway, and whole streets can split. And now, scientists warn a fault we thought wasn't active anymore could unleash something that strong under a small sleepy town in Canada. Now, if you trace your finger across a map of northwestern Canada, you'll find Dawson City in the Yukon. It looks like a nice place to escape from civilization. After all, it only has about 1,600 residents. It's quiet, remote, and famous for its gold rush past. In the late 1890s, Dawson City ballooned into a boomtown almost overnight as prospectors chased gold. Today, the rush is long gone, but the town still looks the part. Wooden boardwalks and saloon-style facades give it the feel of a set straight out of a Western movie. Oh, and beneath all of that is a fracture in the Earth itself. Dawson City is located on top of what's known as the Tintina Fault. It's a massive crack in the Earth's crust that stretches for hundreds of miles toward Alaska. Until recently, scientists believed that this zone had been inactive for over 40 million years. But newer studies tell a different story. Just a quick reminder, faults are giant cracks when 2 slabs of Earth's crust meet. They're always trying to slide past each other, but their jagged edges catch and lock. Pressure builds for decades, continuously bending and straining the rock. Then, suddenly, the locked zone breaks, and the slabs slip into a new position in just seconds. That abrupt lurch releases all the stored energy, sending seismic waves racing outward. The ground-shaking consequence is called an earthquake. Scientists say the ground on each side of Tintina has been trying to slide past itself for ages, but it's stuck. And now, that stuck zone has built up around 20 feet of strain. That's how far the land would shift sideways if it all gave at once. That's not just a small crack. That's straight up something from a disaster movie. If all that built-up tension snaps in one go, the result could be a magnitude 7.5 earthquake. How strong is that? Well, pretty strong. So, what happens during a big quake? The shaking can last up to 30 seconds or more, which is an eternity when the walls are swaying and the floor feels like it's rolling under your feet. If you're near the fault, things can get really scary. The ground doesn't just shake, it could take a big step sideways. This can lead to some renovations. Roads might get a new zigzag pattern, and unreinforced buildings could decide to do the twist. And if it happens in a Canadian winter, let's just say it could turn a simple power outage into a survival horror adventure. Being on soft soil is like sitting on wobbly jelly. It amplifies the shaking. Solid rock is a bit more stable. However, it's still dangerous. For example, in Mexico in 2003, a 7.5 quake damaged over 43,000 homes, buckled roads, and cut power for miles. In Sulawesi in 2018, the same magnitude not only leveled buildings, but triggered a tsunami and liquefaction. The whole neighborhood was swallowed as the ground turned to quicksand. Now here's something interesting. Most people don't think of Canada as an earthquake country, but it actually gets around 5,000 quakes a year. However, they're so small that you'd never feel them. The real hotspot is the West Coast, near British Columbia. That's where you hear people whisper about the infamous Big One. It refers to a future mega-thrust earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone, a massive fault that runs for 600 miles just offshore. Unlike Tintina's sideways slip, Cascadia works by one tectonic plate shoving under another. For centuries, the North American plate has been bent upward like a spring as the Juan de Fuca plate has been diving below. When it finally snaps, that's a magnitude 9.0, more than 30 times stronger than a 7.5. We know it can happen because it already has. The last big one struck in 1700. It was so powerful, it didn't just shake the Pacific Northwest. It launched a tsunami across the ocean that smacked Japan, where villagers recorded an orphan wave with no local quake to explain it. Only later did scientists connect the dots. Now this brings us to the fact that despite all this, the size of the fault, the quiet buildup of strain, and the potential for a magnitude 7.5 earthquake, the Tintina fault isn't even listed on Canada's official seismic hazard map, at least for now. That means no warnings, no color-coded danger zones. And when a fault isn't on the map, nobody designs a building for it. There's no proper preparation. You don't build reinforced structures or have seismic codes, especially when people don't expect that the ground could split open. Now, to be honest, that's not someone's mistake. The fault just didn't show any signs of being active recently. And this part of Canada is really big, quiet, and doesn't have a lot of monitoring. Not until too long ago, people had thought of the Tintina as just a geological oddity, something cool for looking at the past, but not really relevant for the future. For years, the Tintina fault flew under the radar, but that changed when researchers brought high-tech gear. They uncovered subtle but clear land shifts near Dawson City. They looked like scars on the landscape and pointed to past earthquakes, including one that pushed the land nearly 3,000 feet over millions of years. Now, interestingly, newer glacial features showed no signs of disruption, which means the last major quake probably happened right before the end of the last ice age. In geologic terms, that's pretty recent. When scientists lined up those land shifts with the ages of glaciers, the picture was clear. The Tintina fault isn't retired. It's just been on a really long coffee break, and now it's itching to clock back in. That's why researchers want it officially on Canada's seismic hazard map. Dawson City deserves more than a shrug emoji when the ground decides to stretch. The experts are basically playing detective with dirt. They're scanning forests and rivers for faint scars that past earthquakes tried to hide. They're digging trenches like archaeologists with a taste for chaos, flipping through the Earth's diary one muddy page at a time. Every crack, wrinkle, and layer adds to the story of when Tintina last threw a tantrum and how loud the next one could be. It's pretty cool that satellites can literally track if one side of a valley is slowly creeping ahead of the other, like tectonic snail racing. The goal is to find out how often this fault snapped in the past, how much stress it's still holding on to today, and whether it's going to go off quietly or all at once. Finally, just because you know that plates are pushing against each other underneath, you still can't put a date on it. Long stretches of silence might mean the rocks are getting ready for something huge, or they could just be releasing stress in tiny ways that go unnoticed. Scientists can model possibilities, but no one has a countdown clock for the next rupture. The smartest mindset isn't prediction, it's preparation. You brace for the plausible, not the precise, because the Earth's schedule doesn't come with reminders. It turns out the Earth's crust is always fidgeting. It's just that our maps are a little behind on the gossip. A fault everyone thought was harmless might actually be sitting on a magnitude 7.5 size secret. But don't worry, this isn't a cue to panic. It's a cue to get smart. Better data, sturdier buildings, and a few just-in-case habits. When the ground finally decides to settle its debt, what really matters isn't whether Dawson City feels the shake. It's whether everyone's prepared enough to turn a potential disaster into just a real wild story to tell later. Hey, have you ever been in an earthquake? I have. Tell me your story in the comments.
Canada is massive, but almost everyone lives in the east or the west. And right in the middle, there is this huge stretch of land where hardly anyone calls home – Northern Ontario. So why does this place almost feel off-limits? Northern Ontario is part of, well, Ontario. It's a super busy province, home to major cities like Toronto and Ottawa. About 1/3 of all Canadians live there, but most of them are down in the southern part of the province, not up north. But that doesn't really add up when you think about it because the northern part is way, way bigger. We're talking about a region that is more than 300,000 square miles, pretty much the same size as the whole country of Turkey. Northern Ontario takes up about 87% of the entire province, but strangely, only about 6% of Ontario's population lives in this area. But before you start dreaming about moving there for some peace and quiet, hold on. There are 4 big reasons people choose not to, and honestly, you'll probably agree. Reason number 1, the land itself. Look up the region on Google Earth, and all you will see is a huge stretch of empty space. Nothing special at first glance, but zoom in, and that's when things start getting complicated. Northern Ontario is famous for its rugged, remote landscapes, full of endless forests and lakes. It's beautiful to look at or snap a photo of, but living there is a whole different story. The geography makes the area tough to get around and makes it hard to build things like transportation routes and railways. And since it's so difficult to put decent roads up there, the whole region stays pretty isolated. That takes us to reason number 2, remoteness. You might think that, being in the center of the country, it could serve as a great link between the eastern and western parts of Canada. But in reality, that's not how it works, and the region is very far from Canada's major cities. Take Greater Sudbury, the largest city in Northern Ontario, with around 160,000 people. The closest major city is Toronto, which is about 230 miles away. So yeah, that's roughly a 4-hour drive just to get there. If you're planning a holiday weekend in a big, dynamic city, a 4-hour drive sounds like a fun road trip. But if you need to go for a dental appointment or sort out paperwork, that distance suddenly feels endless, not to mention the cost. Unfortunately, that's how life is for many people up there. Residents of Northern Ontario don't have easy access to opportunities or services. With so few people scattered across such a huge area, the region doesn't have enough facilities, infrastructure, or easy access to essential services like healthcare and education. People there sometimes have to deal with poor or even non-existent infrastructure, like missing roads, airports, hospitals, and schools. Without those things, settling down is really tough. And in rural areas, it's even worse, because the lack of services can seriously hurt their quality of life. Psychologically speaking, that's not great either. People can end up feeling isolated and lonely, and the freezing weather doesn't help. Which brings us to reason number 3 why most people don't live in Northern Ontario: the harsh climate. If you're not a fan of cold weather, you should definitely leave this region off your travel bucket list. Winters up there can be long and brutal, with temperatures sometimes dropping as low as 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Have you ever tried shoveling snow when it's this cold? Yeah, it's not exactly fun. That kind of harsh weather doesn't just mess up your weekend plans or your daily jog. It also makes transportation a huge challenge. The result is that many residents end up isolated from essential services and job opportunities. And it's also really hard to build infrastructure, grow industries, or run businesses because of that harsh climate. Take farming, for example. Compared to southern Ontario, the northern region has a shorter growing season and much colder weather. Although crops like oats, potatoes, and green beans can handle the cold, the climate usually limits the variety of things that can be grown. That's why most farms are concentrated in the southern part of the province, and in other parts of the country, like the prairies and Quebec. Anyway, that's just one example of how the climate makes it tough for people to build a strong foundation to support themselves. And that's exactly the fourth reason why Northern Ontario is so empty: the economy. It's not that there aren't any jobs available. In fact, there are plenty. In 2023, the northern part of Ontario had some of the highest job vacancy rates in the country. So unlike in many parts of the world, it's a place where they have tons of jobs available, but no people to fill them. One reason people don't take those jobs is that many of them are older. Just look at Elliott Lake, for example. 42% of the people living in the city are over 65 years old. That's the third highest concentration of older adults anywhere in Canada. But it's not all that different in the rest of the region either. Estimates show that by 2036, people aged 65 and older will make up almost 30% of Northern Ontario's total population. And do you see what happens when they hit 65, right? They've got their pensions, and going back to work just isn't on the radar. This problem only gets worse because young people just don't seem interested in living there. Every year, lots of students around 17 or 18 years old pack their bags and either drive across the province or fly across the country to study somewhere away from their northern homes. And many of them don't come back. But that's actually pretty strange considering the region does have a strong economy, especially in mining. Take the Red Lake area, for example. It's packed with gold. In fact, it's home to one of the richest gold deposits in the world and has already turned out over 30 million ounces of the metal. That's definitely helped Canada stay ranked among the top 5 gold-producing countries in the world. Then, there's this region, known as the Ring of Fire. It's centered around McFaulds Lake in the Kenora district and covers about 1,900 square miles. It's rich in valuable minerals like chromite, cobalt, nickel, copper, and platinum. These days, Northern Ontario's mining industry is making a big comeback and attracting new investments. That's happening because the world is suddenly desperately looking for critical minerals. By that, I mean essential elements used in modern technologies like smartphones and renewable energy systems. Minerals like cobalt, nickel, and copper are especially important for making the batteries that power electric cars, for example. So, right now, it seems like the whole mining scene in the region is doing pretty well. But the industry has gone through plenty of ups and downs, with fluctuations and periods of decline. And that, combined with the possible lack of variety and jobs outside the mining industry, means people are more likely to leave the region in search of better opportunities. Interestingly though, mining companies are now struggling to find enough skilled workers in Northern Ontario. And that's probably because of all the reasons we've already talked about: an older population, harsh weather, tough geography, and a long distance from major urban centers. So, it's basically a cycle. And local authorities are trying to break out of it by improving infrastructure in the region, offering more incentives, and finding ways to keep young workers from leaving. Some of their strategies include offering cash rewards to people who refer healthcare workers for job openings or providing tax-free payments to help cover higher home energy costs. And there are plenty of other initiatives too. So yeah, with strategies like these, it's definitely possible to grow the population there. And who knows, maybe one day this region could be bustling with people.
Hey, quick question. How many continents are there? 7? Maybe 5? There's no correct answer. According to different approaches, the range is between 4 to 7. But it might actually be as many as 8. Chances are, a lost continent has recently been found between Greenland and Canada. This new continent discovery could also potentially be the key to how microcontinents form. What does this all mean, and what makes this hidden landmass near Greenland so important? Now, if you're like me, and if you are, then there's 2 of us, when you hear the word continent, you probably think of land like Europe or Africa, places above water where people live. But in science, a continent isn't about being above sea level. It's about what the land is made of. Earth's outer layer, called the crust, comes in two main types, continental and oceanic. Continental one is thicker, lighter, and made of different types of rock, like granite. The oceanic crust is thinner, heavier, and made mostly of dark volcanic rock. Now, the discovery under the Davis Strait between Greenland and Canada appears to be a piece of continental landmass, even though it's under the ocean. Scientists call it a proto-microcontinent because it began to break off from a larger terrain millions of years ago, but never quite made it. As tectonic plates slowly shifted, the Earth's crust in this region stretched and cracked. One chunk started to split away, but for some reason, the process stopped. It didn't drift off like a full continent, and it didn't sink like ocean crust either. Instead, it stayed right there, floating beneath the waves all this time. This makes it different from true microcontinents, like Zealandia, which have completely detached and now exist as separate tectonic blocks. Zealandia is a submerged microcontinent near New Zealand. About 94% of it lies underwater, but because it's made of continental crust, many geologists say it qualifies as Earth's eighth continent. However, Zealandia is still debated because it's too big to be a microcontinent, and there's no official global body to define its status. There's no global organization like the UN or some kind of international geology council that can declare, hey, this is a new continent. Unlike Madagascar, which is fully above sea level and widely accepted by geologists as a classic example of a microcontinent, Zealandia is still waiting for a proper label. I know you're probably wondering, isn't Madagascar an island? The simple answer is, it's both. It's the fourth largest island in the world completely surrounded by water, but it's also geologically considered a microcontinent because it broke off from the supercontinent Gondwana around 88 million years ago and is made of continental crust, not oceanic crust. Unlike volcanic islands like Hawaii, this isn't just built from lava. It's a real piece of ancient continental crust. So, Madagascar checks both boxes: island by geography, microcontinent by geology. And that's exactly why these discoveries can be fascinating. Just like Madagascar stands out above the waves, this newly discovered landmass under the Davis Strait stands out beneath them, thanks to its unusual structure. What makes it stand out is its unusual thickness. Most of the ocean floor is thin, like metal. This is more like packed clay, layered with continental materials. Underneath this cozy comforter, scientists discovered some odd layers of rock, unusual because they're not where they should be. These layers act more like the materials found on continents rather than those typically seen on ocean floors. There are hints of granite-like formations and distinct magnetic properties, which suggest that this stuff is similar to what makes up dry land. The size is also remarkable. The proto-microcontinent is about 12 to 15 miles across, which makes it roughly the size of a mid-sized city, like Manhattan Island that's 6,500 feet underwater. The fact that it sits right under the Davis Strait, one of the widest ocean passages on Earth, makes it one of the largest submerged continental fragments we've found. According to researchers, this landmass began to form between 58 and 49 million years ago, when Greenland and Canada were slowly drifting apart. Maybe they just weren't getting along. Hey, it happens. As they pulled apart, the crust under the Davis Strait stretched, and one of the main fault lines shifted. But the breakup didn't finish. Around 48 million years ago, the rifting stalled and Greenland's motion away from Canada slowed dramatically when it later bumped into Ellesmere Island. It's like a car swerving off and then back onto the freeway, a turn that was never completed. That's basically what happened. A chunk of land got stuck between the motion. It didn't float off into the ocean like a new continent, and it didn't get pulled down into the earth either. It just stayed where it was, stranded beneath the water. But that's not all. This chunk has its own fault system, and scientists say it actually looks like a miniature version of the San Andreas fault in California. Now, a fault is basically a crack in the Earth's crust where sections of rock slide past each other. Think of it as a place where the Earth's surface split and tried to slide sideways. In California, this movement still happens today and can cause earthquakes. But under the Davis Strait, it's a different story. The movement started then suddenly stop, like hitting pause in the middle of a big shift. It's a frozen moment in the planet's past, preserved right beneath the waves. For geologists, that makes the microcontinent under Davis Strait incredibly valuable. That sudden pause in motion helps explain why some chunks of land break away cleanly, while others twist, stall, or disappear. But this isn't just academic. By studying how continents break apart or stall, scientists can better predict future shifts in land, fault lines, and seismic activity. And predicting earthquakes and geological hazards could prove quite valuable to everyone. Knowing how microcontinents form could help us anticipate how the planet's surface might shift over millions of years, which affects everything from climate models to resource availability. But even just the technological advancement needed for such discoveries is greatly beneficial. The same tools used to map this hidden land are used for oil exploration, laying undersea cables, climate monitoring, and even search and rescue missions. Speaking of technology, for a long time, this hidden landmass near Greenland remained invisible. Just 10 or 15 years ago, the ocean floor under the Davis Strait was basically a mystery. It's deep, almost frozen, obviously not the easiest place to explore. But today, thanks to modern tools, a new continent discovery could be just a matter of time. Scientists can finally see and hear what's going on under all that water. First, they use seismic reflection imaging. That's a method where ships send sound waves down to the ocean floor and record how they bounce back. Various layers of rock reflect sounds in different ways, which helps build a picture of what's hidden underneath. It's kind of like how bats use echoes to see in the dark. Satellites also play a role in collecting gravity data. This may sound strange, but different types of rocks have slightly different weights. Heavier rocks create stronger gravitational pull, and satellites can measure those tiny differences. Another tool commonly used for these explorations is underwater sensors, which sit quietly on the seafloor and listen for natural vibrations, like mini earthquakes or shifts in rock. These vibrations help scientists figure out what the crust is made of and how thick it is. They're basically ears on the ocean floor. They also most likely used AUVs, or autonomous underwater vehicles, basically robot submarines that can scan the seafloor in high resolution even under thick ice. In any case, scientists are very excited because this new continent discovery is more than just a geological surprise. It's what they call a natural laboratory. The study of the microcontinent Davis Strait offers a rare opportunity to understand how microcontinents form, evolve, and sometimes fail to fully separate. It also reminds us that Earth's crust isn't as neatly divided as we once thought. Beneath the ocean, there may be other hidden landmasses near Greenland or elsewhere, almost continents, just waiting to be found. This lost continent of Canada may not have made it as a fully fledged landmass, but its discovery is already reshaping how we view plate tectonics. And thanks to advances in technology, places we once ignored are now offering up secrets about the planet's deep past, and maybe even its future.
The floor is lava! Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help!" Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level, and a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence, and when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of Liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the endgame here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places, like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first.
Consider South America and Africa. Don't they kind of look like they fit together, like puzzle pieces? Well, they actually did. But about 130 million years ago, South America was like, bye, and slowly started drifting away. These days, it's around 1,800 miles from Africa, and it's still on the move. Every year, the continent shifts a little more toward the Pacific Ocean. So, how's that even happening? Tectonic plates are constantly moving. That's what makes the Earth's surface shift over time, going from this to what we see today. But those movements happen so slowly that you and I can't see them go. So, no, Brazilians or Chileans aren't out there feeling their continent inching westward. But the numbers don't lie. South America is moving, and apparently all it wants is to get as far away as possible from this massive underwater mountain range called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. But what exactly is pushing the land toward the Pacific Ocean? It is the heat inside our planet. Way, way down beneath the ocean, there are cracks in the Earth's crust, and magma, super hot melted rock, rises up through those cracks. When that happens, the magma cools and hardens into solid rock. Over time, this process might build underwater mountains, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And as more new crust forms, it begins to push the older crust out of the way. In the process, tectonic plates and the continents riding on top of them get pushed along. Now, on the other side of South America, over by the Pacific, there is the Nazca Plate. It's heavier and it's moving eastward. Since it is denser, it is sliding underneath the South American plate. This entire process is called subduction, and it's happening at a rate of about 3 inches per year. By the way, the collision between these two plates is what's behind all those breathtaking volcanoes scattered throughout the Andes, and it's also making the continent move. So, if everything goes according to plan, projections show that South America will end up more centered in the Pacific Ocean in the future. But some models suggest something way crazier. Before we get into that, though, we need to clear something up. Why on earth isn't Africa following in South America's footsteps? I mean, shouldn't it be drifting west too? Well, not quite. Africa is doing its own thing because it sits on the African plate. So the Mid-Atlantic ridge is located between those two continents, and just like it pushes the South American plate, it also pushes the African plate, but in the opposite direction. It's like this ridge is trying to split up two ex-besties, you know? But there's more. Africa is also being influenced by the East African Rift. That's one of those massive cracks we talked about earlier, but it's happening on land, which makes it extra dramatic. This is what's causing the continent to slowly split apart. It's a long story, but let's just say the rift is pulling Africa in more directions than South America ever had to deal with. Okay, now it is finally time to talk about that crazier thing that might happen to South America and everything around it in the future. Theory number 1. It could break away from North America. I know, super dramatic, but don't panic. We're talking hundreds of millions of years from now, and I won't be around. You see, both continents are moving in the same general direction, but at different speeds. The North American plate is cruising along at about 1 inch per year, while South America is moving a bit faster. So even though they're heading the same way, they are not keeping pace. Over time, as the Atlantic Ocean continues to widen and the Pacific keeps shrinking, all this tectonic movement could eventually pull the Americas apart. Theory number 2. Marine life could go through some major changes. Right now, the Americas act as kind of a giant wall between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Because of that, sea animals have evolved differently on each side. Take the green sea turtle, for example. The ones living in the Atlantic tend to be bigger and lighter in color. Meanwhile, their Pacific cousins are usually smaller and darker. But if, one day, there is no land blocking these two populations from mixing, they would end up with brand new migration routes, new nesting spots, and a lot more overlap in their territories. Now, multiply that scenario by hundreds of other species, and things could really get shaken up. We're talking about new interactions, unexpected competition, and maybe even the rise of entirely new species. Alright, theory number 3. America might meet Africa again. Right now, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is busy creating a new seafloor, and because of that, the Atlantic Ocean is slowly getting wider. But in about 125 million years, scientists believe that process could come to a stop. Instead of the seafloor spreading apart, the ocean floor might start getting pulled under the continents. When that happens, the Atlantic will stop growing and start shrinking. And the water section between South America and Africa is likely to be the first part pulled beneath the land. That means the Americas and Africa could meet again. And when that happens, border countries could turn into super shaky places, with earthquakes happening all the time and brand new volcanoes popping up left and right. The eastern United States would no longer be known for the peaceful green slopes of the Appalachians, but for snow-covered giants that occasionally spew lava and ash, more like the Cascade Range out west. Countries would end up with totally new neighbors. Brazil might line up with Nigeria and Cameroon. Uruguay could be sitting right next to Angola. And Argentina might be sharing a border with South Africa. So if these two continents really do merge, how intense would that be? Well, for starters, this new supercontinent would instantly become the biggest one on Earth, about 1.5 times the size of Asia. And chances are, a brand new mountain range would form right where the continents meet, creating a natural border between nations. Being part of the same massive continent could make a lot of things way easier. For one, tourism could totally take off. People traveling between countries by land without needing pricey plane tickets could be a game changer. But it wouldn't stop there. Other types of economic activity could get a major boost too. Now on one side we have South America, which already produces and sells a wide variety of foods, from wheat to bananas, beef, cocoa, soybeans, hey, you name it. On the other side, there is Africa, exporting things like textiles and clothing. That alone would make them a super powerful bloc when it comes to trading raw goods. But can you name another important thing these two continents have in common? Yep, petroleum. Countries in South America, like Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia, are major oil exporters. And over in Africa, you've got Nigeria, Algeria, and Libya doing the same. Now, can you see just how powerful that kind of union could be? Meanwhile, let's talk about animals. These two massive lands coming together could lead us to wild meetups, like a capybara sharing space with a Nile crocodile, or a sloth seeing a hyena from the top of a tree. This could even lead to new animal hybrids showing up, like a cabby crocodile or a sloth hyena. Okay, those weren't the cleverest names, and honestly, these animals wouldn't be able to mate or even wouldn't want to. But you get the point, right? It's not all positive, unfortunately. New species showing up could become predators, competitors, or even parasites to the native plants and animals. It would take a long time for things to settle into a new balance in those border regions. But honestly, no one really knows how long it would take. The only thing I do know is neither of us will be around to see it, which is okay.
Some places don't look important until the world realizes they hold the keys to the future. That's the case with Canada's Arctic. For most of history, it was just ice, snow, rocks, caribou, and even more ice. But now, it's about to become one of the most important places on Earth, and maybe make Canada a global superpower. Why? Because it's hiding minerals that power electric vehicles, satellites, and missile systems, while the demand is skyrocketing. However, it's not just mining and having resources, it's also about control. Right now, China has a massive head start because it refines over 90% of the world's rare earths. That means if you want to launch a satellite, manufacture advanced electronics, or even just keep the lights on in your fancy smart home, odds are you're relying on China. And that makes a lot of world powers very nervous. Because when everything's going electric, the last thing you need is being dependent on your geopolitical rival. So now, the global clean tech treasure hunt is officially on. The US, Europe, Japan, Australia, they're all competing. However, the latest technology and untapped potential might give Canada the upper hand. Canada's had these minerals for decades. But with low prices, tough terrain, and no global rush, they mostly stayed untouched. However, Ottawa is finally stepping up its game. Back in 2022, Canada rolled out the Critical Minerals Strategy with billions in funding and tax perks to get companies digging. There's also plans to build the necessary roads, ports, and power lines to tap into those remote deposits up north. Canada already produces more than 60 minerals and metals, but 31 of them are now considered critical. 6 of those are having VIP treatment: lithium, graphite, nickel, cobalt, copper, and rare earth elements. But digging it up is just step 1. The real plan? Keep it local. Melt that frozen treasure into shiny new batteries right at home. That means not just mines, but also refineries, processing centers, and high-tech factories popping up where there used to be nothing but snowdrifts and silence. While others are talking, Canada's busy paving roads and stringing power lines. Slowly but surely, they're turning snowfields into a high-tech playground. Getting to all that buried treasure used to be nearly impossible. After all, we're talking about land so remote that roads literally stop hundreds of miles too early. The ground is frozen solid for most of the year. And even if you found something valuable, just getting out was a logistical nightmare. So what changed? Canada has an ace up its sleeve. Don't know about you, but I use it mainly for making memes and music. But geologists? They're scanning the Arctic like it's Minecraft with X-ray vision. Instead of drilling blind, they're using decades-old core samples, plugging them into AI, and getting shockingly accurate predictions about what's underground. It's like upgrading from a pirate's treasure map to a GPS that actually says, "Dig here." Companies like Geologic AI and Cobalt Metals are already doing this, pouring data into AI and getting X marks the spot hits for nickel, cobalt, and rare earths. In the Northwest Territories, Canada is running a pilot lab that uses AI and digital scanning to reanalyze decades-old rock samples. The goal is to spot hidden mineral deposits that old methods might have missed without digging a single new hole. All that sounds great, but maybe I made it sound simpler than it is. Digging up the Arctic is a logistical nightmare. For starters, this isn't just a remote patch of land. The Canadian Arctic is huge. Almost half the country, stretching over Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. We're talking about a region larger than India, with fewer people than a small city. Most of it is permafrost, wilderness, or ice-covered islands scattered across the Arctic archipelago. Temperatures go from barely 50 degrees Fahrenheit during summer to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, with ground that stays frozen for most of the year. Fun fact, did you know that negative 40 degrees happens to be the same as negative 40 degrees Celsius? It's the one temperature where both scales intersect. They climb at different rates, but eventually cross paths when it gets cold enough. Just a small trivia nugget for weather nerds like me. Anyways, you can't just roll in a truck and break ground in the Arctic. Up there, roads just stop. Want to build something? It can take years, and one nasty winter can put everything on ice. And if you want to continue up north, you need more of everything. More food, more fuel, more machines, which means even more money. Speaking of money, another chilling fact is how much this all costs. Mining in the far north is way more expensive than doing it in, say, Australia or Chile. An AI might tell you where the minerals are, but people and big machines still have to dig, and that costs a fortune. But that's not all. Most of the Canadian North is Indigenous land. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities have lived there for thousands of years, and mineral hotspots often sit right on their ancestral grounds. So when Canada talks about unlocking the Arctic, it's not just a question of roads and robots. It's a question of partnership and collaboration. And that's not optional. Legally, projects on Indigenous land require consultation and, in many cases, consent. The good news, some communities aren't just involved, they're leading the way. In regions like Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, Indigenous-owned corporations and world powers are already shaping how development happens on their terms. If Canada wants to pull this off, it's going to need more than tech and funding. It's going to need trust. So with all that in mind, can Canada pull this off? Honestly? With technological advancements and partnerships, it doesn't seem impossible. But Canada isn't just doing one thing right. It's doing a bunch of things at the same time. Let's recap. Hidden resources? Checked. New strategy? In place. Big funding? Approved. AI tools? Deployed. Indigenous partnerships? Underway. Infrastructure? Already breaking ground. It's a snowball turning into an avalanche. Exploration boosts investment. Investment speeds up roads. Roads unlock more deposits. More deposits attract more factories. It's a feedback loop, and if they keep feeding it, the whole Arctic operation could go from an idea to empire faster than anyone expects, giving a whole new meaning to the phrase frozen assets. But this doesn't just help Canada. It could save the US a whole lot of trouble. If all goes to plan, the US won't need to ship rare earths halfway across the planet. It can just look north, wave at the caribou, and get what it needs from its closest neighbor. That's why the US has publicly backed the effort, offering support and funding to help build a trusted North American supply chain. For Canada, this could be the moment it stops being just a supplier of raw materials and starts becoming a critical power broker in the clean tech economy. For the US, it's like discovering your neighbor has been secretly building a battery factory in their backyard while you were building electric vehicles. And globally? Well, the abundance of resources tends to lower the prices, and that's always a good thing for us regular people. Cheaper cobalt, nickel, and lithium mean cheaper batteries, and cheaper batteries mean more affordable electric vehicles, energy storage, phones, laptops, the works. Now, don't get too excited just yet. Like we said, mining in the Arctic isn't cheap, but in theory, once Canada's clean tech engine is fully up and humming, more supply and shorter supply chains should gradually bring costs down. And it's not just about price tags, it's about stability. Right now, if one country cuts exports or gets caught in politics, everything down the line gets shaky. But with Canada stepping in as a reliable supplier, the global system might get a bit more breathing room. Manufacturers can stop sweating over single points of failure and start building with confidence. At first, researchers thought their cameras were glitching. It was the only possible thing that could explain the weird view in front of them. Scalding water was blasting upward while cool methane was fizzing out right beside it. Such a combo wasn't supposed to even exist, but it did. Scientists were exploring the ocean floor near Papua New Guinea when they stumbled across a weird deep-sea hotspot. It wasn't like any other hotspot. There, super hot and cool methane-packed gas were bubbling out almost side by side. This almost never happens in nature, so the researchers were pretty shocked. They were cruising around with a deep-diving robot, the Rove Keel 6000, poking around underwater volcanoes in a remote island chain. These volcanoes hide all sorts of strange features, but nobody expected to find a full-on hydrothermal vent just tucked down there. Plus, other research trips had passed through the area before and missed it completely. This time, the robot's cameras lit up the seafloor and revealed a bizarre view: boiling vents and cold gas seeping out of the seabed. They were practically touching each other. As you understand, normally these two things show up in totally different places. Hot hydrothermal vents form when underground water gets cooked by magma and shoots upward, carrying minerals with it. Methane seeps, on the other hand, come from cold, mushy layers of sediment packed with old organic matter. This stuff slowly breaks down and leaks out as gas. But at this spot, the geology created a perfect mashup. Under the volcano sits a thick layer of organic-rich sediment. Magma creeping up from below heats these sediments, but at the same time, it also heats mineral-rich water deeper down. So you get two very different fluids: blazing hot vent water and cooler methane gas. Still, both are traveling upward through the same cracks in the seafloor. When they reach the surface, they escape just inches apart. So you end up with this bizarre little neighborhood where boiling mineral water and chilly methane bubbles are hanging out like best buddies. To ocean scientists, this is like discovering a unicorn that can also fly. It's weird, rare, and super exciting. An even more exciting thing is that right next to those weird hot and cold vents, an entire mini-world of creatures has taken over the rocks. The place is packed with huge clusters of deep-sea mussels, long tube worms, little shrimp and amphipods crawling everywhere, and even bright purple sea cucumbers sitting out in the open. The animals are so crowded together that it's hard to even see the rock underneath. Scientists are pretty sure some of these creatures are totally new to science, but they need a special trip just to identify everything living there. The strange mix of hot fluids and methane-heavy gas also changes the rocks themselves. The methane down there is super concentrated, while hot water coming from deeper inside the volcano brings chemicals with it. Together, they create unusual reactions underground. Because of this, metals like gold and silver have built up in the rocks, along with elements like arsenic, antimony, and mercury. It's like a chemical time capsule. The rocks show signs of an older, super hot phase when precious metals were forming. Today, the vents are cooler, but still active. Now, even though this deep sea area is rare and full of life, it isn't safe. Mining already happens nearby, and waste from the huge gold mine on Lahir gets dumped into the ocean. On top of that, companies have licenses to explore the seafloor for minerals and gas. All of this puts the fragile vent community in danger because many of the animals here can only survive in these exact conditions. So scientists are urging for more research and strong protection plans before this one-of-a-kind ecosystem is damaged beyond repair. This underwater treasure needs to be saved before industry wipes it out. This discovery, though, isn't the only unique ecosystem we've ever found. In January 2025, a gigantic iceberg named A84, roughly the size of Chicago, cracked off Antarctica's George VI ice shelf. This ice shelf is enormous on its own, stretching about 280 miles from end to end and about 820 feet thick. During the Antarctic summer, which is November through late February, the top of the ice shelf melts and forms long, skinny pools called ribbon lakes. They got that name because they really do look like giant icy ribbons stretched across the surface. Once A84 broke free and drifted off, it exposed part of the seafloor that had been sealed away under the ice for who knows how long. It was a place absolutely nobody had seen before. A research team aboard the ship Falkor 2 happened to be in the Bellingshausen Sea at the time. As soon as they got word about the iceberg breaking loose, they ditched their original plan. This was basically the deep-sea version of flipping over a huge rock in the woods just to see what's living underneath it. For 8 days, the scientists sent down their underwater robot, Sebastian, and explored depths of more than 4,200 feet. Down in that freezing darkness, they discovered a hidden ecosystem packed with life. Huge corals and sponges formed underwater neighborhoods that were absolutely crawling with creatures. They were not just barely alive, they were thriving. So yeah, the scientists expected to find something down there, but they definitely didn't hope to spot a full-on underwater city of ancient life. There were sea anemones that looked like tiny fluffy trees, sea spiders marching around like creatures from other planets, ice fish, octopuses, and a whole mix of other animals. The entire expedition was live-streamed to researchers around the world. By the way, the recordings are still publicly available if you're interested. Even cooler, the researchers think some of the creatures they saw might actually be brand new species. That's right, genuinely new species in Antarctica in 2025. A few might live only in this one area, and that makes sense because Antarctica is basically its own isolated planet. It's surrounded by the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, which acts like a giant watery moat that has kept the continent cut off from the rest of the world for millions of years. But even if the new species ended up being known ones, the scientists still found some extremely rare animals, like tiny snails, bristly worms, aka polychaetes, little crustaceans, and even the mysterious phantom jellyfish, which already looks like something from outer space. The scientific name for the phantom jelly is Stygiomedusa gigantea, but no one really needs that mouthful, so giant phantom jelly is fine. This thing is massive. Its bell, the umbrella-shaped top, can be more than 3 feet wide. It also has 4 long ribbon-like arms that can stretch up to 33 feet. That's the length of a school bus. Actually, the first one was collected in 1899, but scientists didn't even realize it was a completely new kind of jellyfish until 60 years later. Its body is mostly see-through with a ghostly purple tint, and instead of normal tentacles, it uses those big flowing arms to grab prey and feed itself. Even though jellyfish don't have brains, the way this giant phantom jelly moved caught scientists off guard. It seemed to steer its long arms with surprising control, especially when it drifted through tight spaces near the seafloor. It looked cautious and almost intentional, which is kinda unsettling. Another maybe kinda sorta smart creature lurking in the dark ocean? Great. The researchers also found bristleworms. Officially, they're called polychaetes, but bristleworms sounds way more fun. These worms are common in cold, deep oceans and come in tons of shapes and sizes. Their bodies are made of segments lined with tiny bristles that help them crawl, sense the environment, and defend themselves. One standout is the Antarctic scale worm, which has shiny golden bristles that make it look surprisingly fancy for a creature living in freezing darkness. So, as you see, there are still tons of places and things on Earth that don't seem real or aren't even supposed to exist. And even with our level of technology, we're unlikely to figure out all the wonders the world has to offer in the near future.
Oh boy, scientists predict a volcanic eruption that is likely to be one of the most destructive in the history of our species. There's a 1 in 6 chance of it happening in this century, and it could seriously change the climate even more and put millions of lives in danger. Back in January 2022, the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcano erupted in the South Pacific Ocean, creating a huge explosion. It sent tsunamis all the way to Japan, North America, and South America. Tonga itself was hit hard, with damage costing nearly 20% of the country's entire economy. Now, researchers at the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen have studied ice samples from Greenland and Antarctica, and their findings are worrying, predicting potential global volcanic disaster. They say there's a real chance of a much bigger eruption, a whopping 10 to 100 times larger than Tonga's. In the past, eruptions this size used to change the climate and even cause civilizations to collapse. Despite future volcanic eruption risks, experts say the world isn't prepared at all. Michael Cascadia, a volcanologist from the University of Birmingham, warns that no sufficient effort is made to handle a disaster like this. He says that NASA and other space agencies spend billions on asteroid defense. At the same time, a volcanic supereruption is way more likely than an asteroid impact. And right now, there's no global plan for dealing with a massive eruption, even though it's likely to be far more destructive. The last magnitude 7 eruption happened in 1815 at Mount Tambora in Indonesia. Then, thousands of people lost their lives in just a few days. The disaster also disrupted weather and caused food shortages worldwide, affecting millions. That eruption was the biggest in recorded history. It blasted a massive cloud of particles into the sky. Those particles blocked sunlight, cooled the planet, and caused worldwide chaos. The year after the eruption became known as the Year Without a Summer. Temperatures plummeted, crops failed, famine spread, and a cholera pandemic broke out, leading to tens of thousands of lost lives. A shocking fact, the eruption may have even inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein while stuck indoors during the unusually cold summer of 1816 in Switzerland. Now, since then, many volcanoes have erupted, but none have matched Tambora's scale. Now, over 200 years later, scientists warn that there's a new supervolcano threat. Another massive eruption could be on the way, and the world might not be ready for it. So, while scientists seriously discuss the likelihood of the next volcanic eruption, experts are calling for urgent action to prepare before it's too late. So, the thing is, a massive volcanic eruption today could be even more devastating than the Year Without a Summer. Unlike back then, we're already dealing with all kinds of weather changes and a more fragile global system, which could make the effects even worse. Dr. Michael Rampino, a geological scientist, warns that the world is more unstable now, and it means that a modern-day mega-eruption could have even more severe consequences. But this time, greenhouse gases from fossil fuels may make the aftermath of such an eruption even colder instead of warmer. So we're talking about volcanic activity endangering humanity. Dr. Thomas Aubrey, a volcanologist, found that in a hotter, more turbulent atmosphere, the sulfur dioxide gas released by a volcanic eruption would spread faster and farther than in the past. This gas forms sulfate aerosols, which reflect sunlight and cause global cooling. Because these tiny particles would be more evenly distributed, they'd have a stronger cooling effect than in 1815. Another atmospheric scientist at Cambridge explains that the size of these airborne particles matters. It affects how they absorb sunlight, and in a future warmer climate, an eruption could make the surface cooling stronger by 15%. At the same time, there are still many unknowns. Scientists from the University of Geneva say that we're only beginning to understand the full impacts of such an event. It's also difficult to precisely estimate future volcanic eruption risks, since we have very little data on older eruptions. So, to understand past volcanic activity, researchers analyze ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica, as well as ancient tree rings. Those act as historical records of weather changes. These measurements suggest that several eruptions in the past few thousand years temporarily cooled the planet by about 2 to 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the most catastrophic examples is the 1257 Tsunamis eruption in Indonesia, which was so powerful that it likely triggered the Little Ice Age. It was a period of global cooling that lasted for hundreds of years. More recently, the 1991 Mount Pinatubo eruption in the Philippines slightly cooled Earth for a few years. Because this eruption happened in the satellite era, scientists were able to measure exactly how much sulfur dioxide was released and how it affected the atmosphere. But even with modern tools like satellites and seismic instruments, scientists still have difficult times forecasting the next big volcanic eruption. Luckily, even though we can't predict the exact timing, we can study worst-case scenarios to help authorities prepare. This includes creating evacuation plans and stockpiling food in case of global crop failures caused by volcanic cooling. The changes in weather patterns might make volcanoes more active. Melting glaciers can reduce pressure on underground magma, which will increase the chances of an eruption. Plus, more extreme rainfall, which is becoming more and more common, can seep into volcanic cracks and cause powerful steam-driven explosions. It can affect both active and dormant volcanoes. Because of these risks, researchers are now mapping volcanoes that are the most vulnerable to climate change. Their studies show that the highest supervolcano threat comes from such areas as Iceland, Chile, and Indonesia. Those are places where glaciers are melting quickly or rainfall is increasing dramatically. A 2022 study found that 716 volcanoes worldwide, that's about 58% of all known active above-ground volcanoes, could be triggered by extreme rainfall, increasing the likelihood of another mini ice age. Now let's get back to that Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai eruption that occurred on January 15, 2022. Scientists have confirmed that it created the highest plume ever recorded. The volcano, located underwater in the South Pacific, sent an ash cloud 187,000 feet high. That's higher than any previously recorded eruption. What makes this eruption even more remarkable is that it was the first to ever reach the mesosphere. It's the third layer of Earth's atmosphere. The mesosphere begins at about 160,000 feet above Earth, where meteors start burning up and creating shooting stars. To measure the plume's height, researchers from the University of Oxford and RAL Space used data from 3 geostationary weather satellites. Before this, the record for the highest volcanic plume was held by Mount Pinatubo's 1991 eruption in the Philippines, which reached 131,000 feet high. Interestingly, this kind of measurement was only possible thanks to modern satellite technology, and a decade ago, no one would have been able to do this. Another volcano we should mention in relation to a potential global volcanic disaster is located on Iceland's Reykjanes Peninsula. Its latest eruption happened in November of 2024, leading to evacuations in nearby areas. The eruption began just after 11 p.m. with little warning. The volcano released orange lava from a nearly 2-mile-long fissure. Authorities ordered evacuations for about 50 homes and guests staying at the Blue Lagoon Spa Resort, a popular tourist destination southwest of Reykjavik. While air travel was not affected, officials still warned of potentially dangerous gas emissions spreading across parts of the peninsula, including the nearby town of Grindavik. Grindavik, home to 3,800 residents, has repeatedly witnessed volcanic activity, and past eruptions even damaged its infrastructure and forced evacuations. For example, in August 2024, a 2.5-mile-long crack opened at the Sunthunkangigar crater near Grindavik. It led authorities declaring a state of emergency as lava flowed in multiple directions. Fortunately, Iceland's meteorological office reported that the latest eruption was significantly smaller than the one in August. Geophysics experts conducted aerial surveys and figured out that the situation appeared less intense than the previous eruptions. These days, Grindavik is not at risk, but the possibility of further developments cannot be ruled out